Now, my friend, let the body grow quiet. There is nothing you must accomplish in this moment. There is nowhere you must go. There is nothing you must solve before sleep will receive you. If you are lying down, let the bed hold you fully. Let the surface beneath you do what it has been waiting to do all along. Let it carry the weight. If you are seated, let the chair support you without asking anything more of your spine than simple stillness. You need not hold yourself up in the old way tonight. You need not brace against life tonight. You need not keep watch. Let the day begin to fall from you, not all at once, gently, naturally, as a coat slips from the shoulders when one comes in from the cold. Let the jaw loosen without command. Let the forehead smooth itself without your trying to smooth it. Let the eyelids grow heavy if they wish to grow heavy. Let the tongue rest softly. Let the hands unclench. Let the belly soften. Let the chest remember that it was not made to remain tightened forever. Do not try to breathe deeply, that is not required. The breath already knows the way back to peace. It is always known. You need not teach it, you need not manage it. Simply let it become what it becomes when no one is interfering. A little slower perhaps, a little wider perhaps, or perhaps not at first. It does not matter. There is no right breath for this. There is only the release of command. And when command is released, the body begins to return to its own quiet wisdom. I am not asking you to concentrate. I am not asking you to prove anything tonight. I am not asking you to manifest with force, or to hold the mind in a rigid grip, or to wrestle your thoughts into submission. No, my friend, I am asking for something much gentler. I am asking you to let go of the old burden of effort for a little while. I am asking you to stop trying to make the night obey you. I am asking you to rest, for the deepest movements of life are not born from strain, they are born from surrender. The dawn does not struggle to arrive, the sea does not force its own tide, the seed does not shout beneath the soil in order to become the tree. All growth has about it a hidden softness. All true unfolding carries a certain stillness. And you too have within you a power that moves most freely, when you are no longer standing over it with anxious hands. Perhaps you have spent many days trying to make things happen, trying to improve them, trying to understand them, trying to outrun fear, trying to get ahead of tomorrow, trying to hold together what felt uncertain. And perhaps that habit of trying followed you into the night, so that even when the body lay down, the mind remained standing, still on guard, still calculating, still asking what must be done. But nothing must be done now. Nothing must be defended now. Nothing must be solved now. Tonight is not asking you for brilliance. It is not asking you for discipline in the hard sense. It is not asking you to become sharp, or forceful, or spiritually impressive. It is asking something much kinder. It is asking you to soften enough to receive. That is all. To receive rest, to receive quiet, to receive a deeper feeling than the one you have carried through the day. To receive life not as an enemy to be managed, but as something that can hold you when you stop holding yourself so tightly. So let the shoulders drop a little more. Let them be lower than they were a moment ago. Let the muscles around the eyes soften as though the day were no longer asking to be watched. Let the back be supported. Let the throat soften. Let the face give up its old expression of effort. No one is looking at you now. No one is measuring you now. No one is asking you to prove your worth by remaining tense. You are allowed to be held, and if thoughts continue, let them continue for a while without concern. Thoughts do not mean failure. Thoughts do not mean you are doing this badly. They are only the last little movements of the day passing through. Let them pass as one watches clouds pass through a great open sky. There is no need to follow them, no need to solve them, no need to answer them. This is not the hour for solving. This is the hour for yielding. If some worry tries to speak, let it speak in the distance, and then let it fade. If some memory rises, let it rise and drift by. If some little anticipation about tomorrow reaches toward you, do not take hold of it. Let it lose its strength in the quiet. The mind does not need another argument tonight. The body does not need another command. The soul does not need another burden. It needs permission to sink. You have never fallen asleep by force. You have only fallen asleep by ceasing to interfere. Sleep has always come when control relaxed enough to let it enter. And it is much the same with the deeper changes in life. They do not come most easily when one is clutching and straining. They come when one is inwardly available, when the hard edge softens, when the hand opens, when the breath widens, when the inner atmosphere changes from pressure to permission. So let permission be here now. Permission not to understand everything tonight. Permission not to fix your life before morning. Permission not to monitor every feeling. Permission not to chase a result. Permission not to make this some great performance. Permission simply to listen, or not even to listen fully, but to drift near these words, while the body learns again how to be still. There is an intelligence in you far older than your habits of worry. It knows how to quiet the breath. It knows how to soften the limbs. It knows how to loosen what the day has tightened. It knows how to carry impressions deeper than the surface mind can carry them. But it does not respond well to being ordered about in fear. It responds to gentleness. It responds to trust. It responds to the kind of quiet that says, without words, I no longer need to fight this moment. Notice now the heaviness in the arms, if there is heaviness there. Notice the stillness gathering in the hands. Notice the little warmth behind the eyes. Notice perhaps that the breath has already begun to lengthen on its own. Or notice only that the body feels slightly less defended than it did. That is enough. A slight softening is enough. A slight settling is enough. Great changes do not always begin with thunder. Very often they begin with the smallest release. And you need not ask whether you are relaxing well enough. You need not grade the depth of your stillness. That too would be effort in another form. Just let the body keep finding its own way downward. Let gravity be your friend tonight. Let the bed or the chair or the room itself remind you that support already exists. You are not creating support by effort. You are noticing it. You are allowing it. There is something deeply merciful in the simple act of no longer trying to hold yourself together. Life is holding you now, not in some dramatic mystical sense, but in the plain and beautiful sense that the earth holds you, the breath continues, the heart moves, the night gathers, and you are not required to manage all of it. You may lay down the old role of constant inner labor. You may lay down the invisible tools of urgency. You may lay them down now. Now, if the eyelids wish to grow heavier, let them. If the mind becomes less sharp, let it. If the edges of things become softer, let them. You are not losing anything precious in this softening. You are entering the region where deeper things can be received, not through force, through openness, not through pressure, through allowing. There is a strange kindness in this borderland, where the body is still here, and yet already beginning to forget its need to stay alert. And in this gentleness, something important begins, not by command, but by atmosphere. Life responds to the state you accept. The body knows this in ways the mind often forgets. A body held in fear prepares for danger. A body touched by ease opens. A life lived under strain keeps reproducing strain. A life that begins even quietly to accept softness and inward safety makes room for another kind of unfolding. You do not need to understand this fully tonight. You need only let the first trace of it touch you. So do not analyze these words too much. Let them pass under the gate of analysis. Let them become almost like the sound of rain in another room, something near, something quiet, something not asking for effort. You are not here to work. You are here to receive. You are not here to chase the night. You are here to let the night carry you. If sleep comes soon, let it come. If wakefulness lingers, let it linger. You are not required to control either one. There is no need to become impatient with the body. There is no need to become impatient with the mind. This is not an examination. This is not a test of spiritual skill. This is a soft doorway, and you have already begun to pass through it, simply by no longer resisting the idea of rest. Let the chest soften a little more now. Let the belly release. Let the mouth rest. Let the tongue lie quietly. Let the hands be easy. Let the shoulders fall away from the ears. Let the eyes rest deeply behind the lids. Let the breath move without inspection. Let the whole body hear the message that nothing is being demanded of it now. There is no pressure to manifest tonight. No pressure to get a result tonight. No pressure to do this correctly. No pressure to stay perfectly focused. Let that pressure fall away. It has no place here. The very effort to get something is often what keeps the deeper self on guard. Tonight, the deeper self is being invited not to labor, but to open, not to perform, but to soften, not to chase, but to receive. And perhaps that is enough for now, enough that the body feels a little safer, enough that the chest is not quite so guarded, enough that the face is less armored, enough that the mind is a little less determined to solve life at midnight, enough that you are willing to drift. That is enough, more than enough. For the night does not ask you to become remarkable. It asks only that you stop resisting rest. The deepest things are planted in softness. The truest changes begin when the old force loosens. And so now, my friend, stay here in this gentler place. Let the body grow quiet. Let the day recede. Let the mind become less defended. Let yourself be held. Let yourself be safe. Let yourself drift. There is a quiet law always at work beneath the surface of life. It does not advertise itself. It does not raise its voice. It does not seek attention from the reasoning mind. And yet it is there all the while, moving underneath events, underneath moods, underneath what men call circumstances. Most people live their whole lives feeling its effects without ever pausing long enough to notice its cause. They see the branches move, but they do not feel the wind. They see the harvest, but they do not think of the seed. They feel the weight of events, but they do not ask what invisible thing has been giving those events their shape. I have watched this law all my life, not in books alone, not in theory, not in the clever speech of those who wish to impress the mind, but in living men and women. I have watched how one person strains and strains and yet seems to remain in the same narrow circle, while another, who is far less frantic, far less desperate, moves quietly into provision, into help, into openings that appear almost natural. And because the world worships effort, it usually misunderstands what it sees. It says the struggling man is noble and the quiet one is lucky. It says the anxious one is serious and the calm one is merely favored. But beneath those judgments, there is something much deeper at work. Life does not answer desperation in the way people imagine. It does not bend because a man clenches harder. It does not rush to supply because a woman worries more intensely. Desperation feels powerful to the one experiencing it, but in truth it is not power. It is tension. It is contraction. It is the inward confession that what is desired is far away, uncertain, unstable, perhaps even unwilling to come. And because life responds not merely to words but to state, it mirrors the contraction more faithfully than it mirrors the request. This is difficult for many to accept at first because the world has trained them to believe that strain is evidence of seriousness. They have been taught that if you worry, you must care. If you force, you must be strong. If you clutch, you must be responsible. But look carefully, and you will see that worry is not responsibility. Worry is only the rehearsal of fear. Force is not power. Force is often the confession that one does not yet trust. And inner clutching is not wisdom. It is the body's way of saying, I do not believe I am safe. There is a law beneath all this, a law as quiet and exact as any law of nature. Consider the river. It does not become powerful by tensing. It does not carve the land by panic. It does not hurry because a stone stands in its path. It moves in accordance with its nature. It yields, and in yielding it prevails. It bends, and in bending it reaches the sea. The force of the river is not in anxiety, it is in continuity. It is in the certainty of its direction. It is in the fact that it does not fight itself while it moves. Or look at a seed buried in the soil. The seed does not awaken by argument. It does not break itself open by fear of delay. It does not whisper into the dark, what if I do not become? No, it rests in the law of its own unfolding. The soil receives it. The hidden life within it responds. It is not passive in the dead sense. It is receptive in the living sense. And because it does not resist its own nature, growth begins. Look also at your own heart. You have never once commanded it to beat through every hour of your life. You have not stood over it with fearful instructions. You have not forced it to continue through effort of will. It moves by a deeper law. It answers life directly. It has remained faithful through sleep and waking, through sorrow and peace, through attention and forgetfulness alike. There is a wisdom there that does not require strain. There is an order there that is older than worry. And the same is true of the dawn. The dawn does not wrestle the darkness. It does not arrive in a state of inner conflict. It comes because that is the movement of the law. It comes because the deeper order of things is not governed by agitation. You can pace the floor all night, and the dawn will not arrive a moment sooner. You can sleep in trust, and still it will come. This should teach the soul something. Reality is not always moved by the amount of force you exert. Much of life unfolds according to a deeper agreement than your surface mind has yet understood. The tide too answers something deeper than command. It does not rise because the shore begs it. It answers the moon. It is drawn by law. It moves in obedience to an invisible relationship. And I tell you, much of what happens in human life is also movement by invisible relationship. The outer world rises and falls according to inner states far more than people suspect. They think events are random. They think fortune is scattered by chance. They think money comes only through grinding effort, cleverness, or favor. Yet again and again I have seen that the deeper determinant is the state from which one lives. Now do not misunderstand me. I am not saying that effort has no place in the world of appearances. A man may labor. A woman may attend to practical matters. One may take action, write letters, meet responsibilities, make decisions. But effort by itself, when rooted in fear, does not govern outcome in the way the world imagines. It may rearrange the surface for a little while. It may produce motion. It may give the appearance of control. But state governs outcome. State determines how effort is used, how it is received, where it leads, whether it opens or closes, whether it comes from fear or from certainty. Two men may perform the same outward act and get very different results. One writes from inward scarcity and receives resistance. Another writes from inward ease and receives welcome. Two women may walk into the same room and speak nearly the same words. One enters in the state of not enough, and the room reflects hesitation. The other enters in the state of being supported, and the room begins to answer differently. The surface act may appear nearly identical, but the inner state is not, and it is the state that shapes the field around the act. That is why I say life responds to inner state, especially to what is inwardly accepted as natural. What you feel is natural becomes the climate through which life reaches you. If worry is natural, life will continue to offer you occasions for worry, because the whole being is organized around it. If struggle is natural, then even good things may arrive clothed in strain, because that is the only language the nervous system recognizes as familiar. If support is natural, if being supplied begins to feel normal, then life begins to answer in that tone. The channels may differ, the forms may vary, but the quality of response changes because the accepted state has changed. Naturalness is one of the great secrets here. The subconscious is not impressed by what you occasionally shout at it with a strained mind. It is impressed by what you accept as ordinary, what you return to again and again, what feels like home. And because many people have accepted tension as home, they are startled when I tell them that the law moves most freely when resistance loosens. They have mistaken the grip for control. They have mistaken anxiety for engagement. They have mistaken the inner knot for seriousness. But what if that knot has not been your strength? What if it has only been your habit? What if the very thing you have taken to be your protection has actually been the gatekeeping supply at a distance? What if money, or its equivalent, comes not because you have tightened yourself around life, but because you have ceased to oppose the deeper current through which life would gladly move? I have seen again and again that resistance is exhausting, not because life is cruel, but because resistance is friction against your own deeper nature. There is within you a receptive intelligence, a creative depth, a field of awareness that does not need to be bullied into action. It needs only to be impressed with the right state. When resistance loosens, that impressing becomes easier. When the mind softens, the inner soil becomes more open. When the body is no longer braced against tomorrow, it becomes capable of accepting a different tomorrow. This is why I began by asking you to let the body grow quiet. Not because silence in itself is holy in some remote ceremonial sense, but because silence loosens resistance. A quiet body becomes a less defended doorway. A softened chest becomes less committed to fear. A loosened jaw, a slower breath, a less guarded belly, all of these are signs that the old inner clutch is relaxing. And as it relaxes, the law can move more freely through you. You do not force the river to flow by tightening at its banks. You do not help the seed by standing over the soil in panic. You do not improve the heartbeat by anxiously monitoring every beat. You do not pull the dawn over the horizon with your hands. You do not command the tide by shouting into the sea. In all these things, the deeper law answers alignment, receptivity, and natural movement. The same is true of your own life. So perhaps now something in you can begin to ease around money, not by pretending outer conditions do not exist, but by releasing the superstition that panic is power. Perhaps you no longer need to clutch in the old way. Perhaps you no longer need to make inner strain your daily ritual. Perhaps something deeper than struggle governs your life after all. And if that is true, then a great weight can begin to fall away. For the moment you see that strain is not your authority, you begin to reclaim a different kind of authority. Not the authority of force, but the authority of state. Not the authority of trying to overpower appearances, but the authority of choosing inwardly what shall be natural in you. This is a calmer power, a quieter power, but it is no less real. Indeed, it is more real, because it reaches the root rather than merely wrestling with leaves. And tonight, in this quietness, in this borderland where the body is becoming softer and the mind less defended, you may let that realization settle. Life is not only what appears on the surface, there is a law beneath the visible. It does not answer panic. It does not reward inner clutching. It responds to what you are. It responds to what you accept. It responds to what feels normal in you. So let the old worship of effort loosen now. Let the habit of force lose some of its authority. Let the body continue to trust the bed, the chair, the room, the breath. Let the soul begin to trust that money need not be pulled from life through fear. Perhaps it may come more naturally than you have allowed yourself to believe. Perhaps supply is not brought near by desperation, but by the quiet acceptance of a state in which supply feels natural, expected, and safe. Stay with that softly now. Something deeper than struggle governs my life. Let that be felt, not argued. Something deeper than struggle governs my life. And perhaps, just perhaps, I no longer need to force money. Now let me show you very gently where so many go astray in this matter of money. Not because they are foolish, not because they are unworthy, not because life has chosen others and forgotten them, but because they have been taught a pattern so common that almost no one questions it. They desire money from the state of not having. They reach for supply from the feeling of shortage. They ask for relief while inwardly remaining identified with pressure. And because this is so common, it feels normal. Yet it is the very thing that keeps money standing at a distance. Most people, when they pray for money, do not realize what they are truly saying beneath the words. On the surface, they may say, I need help, or I want abundance, or I hope things improve. But the subconscious does not hear only the sentence. It hears the state from which the sentence rises. It hears the identity beneath the request. It hears whether the words come from rest or from hunger, from certainty or from fear, from possession or from absence. And very often the hidden message is not, I am supplied. It is, I do not have. I am behind. I am not safe. I am waiting. So a strange thing happens. A man asks for wealth, but he asks as one who is poor in feeling. A woman asks for relief, but she asks as one who is already identified with burden. They speak the right words perhaps, but they do so from the wrong state. And the law, being exact, responds not to the surface wish, but to the deeper identity. It responds to the state. So they ask, and yet they remain in the same narrow corridor, wondering why sincere words did not move life. The answer is not that prayer failed. The answer is that the prayer itself was saturated with not yet. You see, wanting money is not the same thing as receiving money. Desire in itself is not the enemy. Desire is often the first stirring of expansion. Desire shows you what the soul is ready to enter. But when desire is held from the posture of lack, it becomes longing rather than creation. It becomes a continual reaching outward. It becomes the emotional atmosphere of absence. And absence, repeated enough, begins to feel like identity. This is why wanting money often, not because desire is wrong, but because most people do not know how to move from desire into assumption. They remain at the level of yearning. They stand outside the house of supply and admire it, plead for it, imagine how wonderful it would be, but they do not enter. They do not sit down in the state. They do not wear it inwardly as natural. They continue to relate to money as something over there, something ahead, something not yet theirs, and so the subconscious faithfully maintains the distance they keep announcing. Longing keeps money distant. Waiting keeps money distant. Hoping keeps money distant. Fearing keeps money distant. All of these seem different on the surface, but inwardly they carry the same confession. They all say, in one form or another, it is not mine now. Longing says it beautifully perhaps, but it still says it. Waiting says it patiently, but it still says it. Hoping says it softly, but it still says it. Fear says it sharply, but it too says the same thing. The subconscious hears the common root in all of them. It hears not having. That is why so many tire themselves with effort and still feel as though money remains psychologically far away. It is not only outwardly distant to them, it is inwardly foreign. It feels strange. It feels uncertain. It feels like something that belongs to different people, different times, different conditions, different worlds. Shortage, however, has become emotionally familiar. Worry has become familiar. The little tightening in the chest has become familiar. The reflex of counting from fear has become familiar. The old thoughts of what if there is not enough have become familiar. And what is familiar is what the subconscious tends to preserve until a different normal is accepted. Many people have unknowingly made shortage emotionally familiar. That is one of the saddest and most ordinary things I have ever observed. not because they chose misery with some conscious cruelty toward themselves, but because life trained them into it little by little. A bill arrived and the body tightened. Another demand came and the breath grew shorter. A fearful conversation was heard in childhood, perhaps, and the nervous system learned that money meant danger. Another month came with pressure, another season with strain, another quiet humiliation, another postponed desire, another inner conclusion of not enough. And over time, shortage was no longer just a condition, it became a climate. Once shortage becomes a climate, the person begins to pray from inside that climate. He asks for money the way a drowning man gasps for air. She asks for relief with the body of one already convinced relief is far away. This is not blame. No, my friend, this is freedom. For the moment you see the mechanism, you are no longer merely trapped inside it. The moment you notice that the real issue is not your desire for money, but the state from which you are desiring it, a doorway opens. The subconscious responds to the feeling of identity, not to verbal wishing. That is why I tell you again and again that words alone are not creative unless they are clothed in the feeling of being. The subconscious is not impressed by a phrase you repeat while your body still trembles in the old condition. It is not moved by abundance words spoken from panic. It is not deceived by language while the deeper self still says, I am the one who struggles. I am the one who worries. I am the one who never quite gets there. You may say money comes easily and yet inwardly feel that it does not. You may say I am prosperous and yet inwardly remain braced like one awaiting bad news. You may say I trust life and yet inwardly still be bargaining, scanning, worrying, calculating from fear. The law does not punish you for this. It simply reflects what is most deeply accepted. And what is most deeply accepted is usually not in the lips. It is in the atmosphere of the body. It is in the tone of the inner voice. It is in the silent identity you carry when no one is watching. This is the contrast that changes everything. Asking for wealth from lack is one thing. Receiving from a state of supply is another. The first says, please bring me what I do not have. The second says, I am already moving from the atmosphere of being supported. The first kneels before money as a beggar. The second rests in the consciousness of one already cared for. The first repeats abundance words because it hopes words alone will save it. The second inhabits abundance feeling until the words, if any are even needed, become natural expressions of a settled identity. Praying as a beggar is exhausting. Resting as one already supported is creative. There is all the difference in the world between the two, though from the outside both may look like prayer. One prays from the feeling of absence. The other prays from the feeling of possession. One says, I want. The other says, whether in words or without them, I am. One waits for money to grant peace. The other enters peace and allows money or its equivalent to become the outer shadow of that peace. This is why effort and worrying did not help. Let that truth land kindly in you, not as condemnation, as release. Perhaps you thought you had to care more, try harder, think more, calculate more, worry more in order to prove that you were serious. But worry only repeated the old state. Effort rooted in fear only watered the same soil. It kept saying to the subconscious, the thing is still far away. I am still not safe. I am still the one who must train. And the subconscious, so faithful, kept giving shape to the state it was receiving. Now perhaps you can begin to see why so much sincere prayer has seemed fruitless. It was not insincerity that blocked it. It was contradiction. It was praying for abundance while living from shortage. It was asking for support while remaining identified with pressure. It was trying to persuade the world to act differently while refusing, unknowingly perhaps, to leave the old emotional dwelling place. The real change comes when the dwelling place changes, when the inner house is furnished differently, when supply feels less like a stranger and more like something one can bear, allow, and quietly expect. You have been approaching money from the wrong state. That realization alone can change the course of your life if you let it. Not because you now possess some new clever theory, but because you have found the true point of change. You do not need to stop desiring. You need to stop desiring from the posture of lack. You do not need to stop caring about money. You need to stop identifying yourself as the one who does not have it. You do not need to fight the desire. You need to move through desire into assumption, into the felt normality of being supplied. And this is done not with violence against the mind, but with understanding, with gentleness, with repetition in the right direction, with the willingness to notice the old state without worshiping it, with the willingness to hear your own inner speech and say, ah, that is the voice of not having, I need not live there now. With the willingness to let the body soften before the world proves anything, because the world has never been the cause in the first place. So let the old begging state be seen now for what it was, not a moral failure, a mistaken position. Let the old habit of wanting from far away be seen for what it was, not proof that you were wrong to desire, but proof that you had not yet entered the feeling of enough. Let the old patterns of hoping and fearing begin to lose some of their authority, for they are not kings, they are only habits, and habits yield when a new state is returned to often enough. Money stays distant for so many people because they have held it mentally as distant and emotionally as foreign. They have wanted it, but not worn it. They have admired it, but not inhabited the atmosphere it would imply. They have treated shortage as familiar and supply as unusual. The subconscious simply kept preserving the familiar. But tonight, you are learning another way. You are learning that the problem is not the desire itself, but the state from which the desire is held. And once that is understood, the whole inner posture can begin to change. Now the heart may say quietly, I see. I have been approaching money from the wrong state. Good. Let that be a soft recognition. Now I see why effort and worrying did not help. Good. Let that too be a gentle release. For you are not here tonight to punish the old state. You are here to leave it. You are here to outgrow it. You are here to stop praying as one abandoned and begin resting as one already supported. And in that shift, life itself begins to answer differently. Now we come to a reversal so profound that once it is truly felt, a man can never again look at life in quite the same way. The world teaches one order, the law reveals another. The world says money first, relief second. The law says relief first, money follows. The world says change the circumstance, and then you may change the feeling. The law says change the feeling, and circumstance must in time answer it. The world says identity is decided by conditions. I tell you that conditions are decided by identity. This is the great reversal, and because it is the exact opposite of what most have been taught, the mind often resists it at first. Not because it is false, but because it is so simple and so liberating that the old habit of dependence feels threatened by it. The human being has been trained to bow before appearances. He looks at what is visible and calls it cause. He looks at the account, the bill, the debt, the employer, the market, the season, the opportunity, the delay, the luck of other men, and he says, there is the thing that decides my life. And having said that, he hands his power away. But appearances are not the cause, they are the result. They are the after image. They are the delayed shadow cast by a former state. They are not nothing. No, to the senses they are very real. A bill can be held in the hand. A debt can be read in figures. A wage can be counted. A market can rise and fall. But reality to the senses is not the same thing as creative cause. What you see is the harvest. What you feel yourself to be is the seed. People usually think money creates relief. This is why they wait. This is why they say, when the money comes, then I will breathe. When the account is full, then I will rest. When the pressure lifts, then I will feel safe. They put relief in the future and then spend the present rehearsing the very tension that keeps relief postponed. They believe that money is the source and that peace is the effect. But if that were true, then no man with money would fear and no woman with wealth would worry. Yet you know as well as I do that many possess money and still live inwardly as paupers. They brace, they clutch, they fear loss, they expect disaster, and so they remain in the state of poverty even while figures may temporarily surround them. This should tell you something of the deepest importance. Money does not create the state. State governs the meaning of money. A fearful man can take plenty and turn it into anxiety. A secure man can begin with little and move into abundance because he is inwardly aligned with supply. So the cause cannot be the money itself. The cause must lie deeper than the thing. It must lie in the consciousness that receives the thing, uses the thing, reacts to the thing, and gives the thing its emotional value. Neville's law says relief assumed inwardly becomes the cause of money or its equivalent. Feel that carefully. If money would bring you relief, then relief entered now, accepted now, felt now, becomes a creative cause. Not because you are pretending paper is in your hand when it is not, but because you are assuming the inner effect that money symbolizes. You are no longer waiting for the world to permit the feeling. You are reclaiming the feeling as the cause of the world. If being supplied would make your chest soften, then soften it now. If having enough would let the shoulders drop, then let them drop now. If freedom from pressure would deepen the breath, then breathe that freedom now. For the subconscious responds to the feeling of reality, not to the visible evidence of delay. Outer facts are effects, not causes. Let that settle. The bill is an effect. The debt is an effect. The employer is an effect. The market is an effect. The season is an effect. The opportunity or the lack of opportunity is an effect. These are all shadows of states. They are the world of echoes. The tragedy is that most men have taken echoes for voices. They listen to the reflected sound and imagine it is the original command. They bow to what has already happened inwardly and call it fate. But fate is only the outer persistence of inward identity. Markets, employers, debt, bills, timing, luck, and opportunities are not ultimate causes. I do not say they have no place in the drama of life. I say they are not sovereign. They are instruments. They are channels. They are mirrors. They are the furniture of the bridge, not the builder of the bridge. If you make them sovereign in your imagination, you become their servant. If you understand them as shadows, you cease worshipping them. You may still move among them, respond to them, handle them, yes, but you do not kneel before them. You do not let them define who you are. How many have spent years bowing to shadows? They bow to the figures in the ledger. They bow to the opinion of the man who signs the wages. They bow to the rumor of the market. They bow to the timing of things. They bow to a delayed letter, an unanswered question, a temporary obstacle, and because they bow, they keep declaring, "You are greater than I. You decide me." And the moment you do that, you place your identity under the rule of appearances. Then appearances continue to rule because you have crowned them king. But no shadow deserves a throne. The mirror is not the master of the face. The mirror only reflects. This metaphor must be understood clearly, for it contains the whole law in a single image. Suppose a man stands before a mirror and sees a troubled face. He frowns at the reflection and commands it to smile. He may plead with it, he may curse it, he may polish the glass, he may move the frame, he may drag the mirror into another room. Yet none of that changes the image while the face remains the same. The mirror has no choice. It reflects. Only when the face changes does the image change. The outer world is the mirror. Consciousness is the face. You have likely spent long years speaking to the mirror, begging the mirror, fighting the mirror, blaming the mirror, studying the mirror as though it were the cause. But the mirror cannot create. It can only report. It can only echo. So the intelligent thing is not to strike at it, fear it, worship it, or beg it. The intelligent thing is to change the face. When I say change the face, I mean change the state, change the accepted identity, change the feeling of being. Change what is natural in you. If the mirror has shown shortage, then shortage was once inwardly accepted somewhere as state. If the mirror has shown strain, strain was once accepted as normal. If the mirror has shown delay, not yet was inwardly alive as identity. You do not change these by commanding the mirror to improve. You change them by inward reversal. You become first. The world follows. This is why I say relief first. Money follows. The world says, get the money and then feel free. The law says, feel free and let the world bring the channel. The world says, secure the condition and then breathe. The law says, breathe now as one already secured, and the condition must rearrange itself. The world says, if you had more, then you could rest. The law says, rest as one inwardly supported, and more will come as a natural extension of that support. This is not poetry. It is law. It is reversibility in consciousness. It is the invisible cause preceding the visible effect. The world says circumstances decide identity. A man looks at his wages and says, this is who I am. A woman looks at the pressures around her and says, this is what life is. A person looks at the numbers and says, I am behind. I am limited. I am small. That is the world's order. Circumstance first, identity second. But Neville says identity shapes circumstance. I am precedes the outer form. State precedes event. Consciousness precedes condition. If I accept myself as supported, life must eventually show support. If I accept myself as always struggling, life must continue to show struggle. Identity is the mold. Circumstance is the poured metal. Think how freeing this is if you dare accept it. If state is cause, then you are not powerless. If state is cause, then the bill is not your master. If state is cause, then delay is not the final word. If state is cause, then no employer, no market, no temporary obstacle holds the throne. The throne is within, the kingdom is within, the creative decision is within. And once you understand this, a certain kind of fear begins to lose its authority. Not all at once, perhaps, but the spell weakens, for fear thrives where appearances are treated as ultimate. When appearances are dethroned, fear begins to starve. I want you to feel that gently now. If state is cause, then I am not powerless. Let that come not as a shout, but as a quiet recognition. If state is cause, then I am not helpless before the mirror. If state is cause, then I no longer need to worship appearances. I can stop staring at the reflection as though it were God. I can stop making the outer world the judge of what I may feel. I can stop waiting for facts to permit peace. You can stop worshipping appearances. That may be one of the most healing truths you will ever allow into your life. No more worship of numbers, no more worship of headlines, no more worship of delay, no more worship of fear dressed as realism, no more worship of shadows. You may still see them, yes. You may still walk among them, yes. But you need not bow. You need not kneel inwardly before them and say, "Tell me who I am," for they are waiting to be told. This is what most people miss. They think the mirror speaks first. It does not. It only speaks back. They think the shadow commands the substance. It does not. It only follows. They think the outer world shapes the inner one. Yet over and over again, life shows the opposite to anyone willing to observe deeply. Change the inner climate, and the outer weather shifts. Change the face, and the mirror alters. Change the accepted state, and the world must begin. Slowly perhaps, quietly perhaps, but inevitably to take the shape of that acceptance. This is why I have led you first into softness, then into the understanding of the law beneath effort, then into the recognition of the mistaken state from which money has been approached. Now you can feel the great reversal. You do not wait for money to grant relief. You enter relief and allow money or its equivalent to follow. You do not ask outer circumstances who you are. You choose who you are and let circumstances report it back. You do not worship the appearance. You use it as information only, never as identity. Let the mirror be a mirror now. Let the shadow be a shadow. Let the bill be paper. Let the market be movement. Let the delay be temporary. Let the employer be a channel and not a god. Let luck fall from its false throne. Let appearances lose their spell, and let the state within begin to reclaim its sovereignty. Because once you know the cause is within, you cease being the frightened servant of the outer scene. You begin to move as one who understands that life is being written from within outward, not from without inward. This is the great reversal. It is quiet, but it changes everything. Relief first, money follows. Identity first, circumstance follows. Face first, mirror follows. State first, effect follows. Let that become softer and softer in you now, until it no longer feels like an idea, but like a deep permission to stop bowing before shadows. Now we come to the sacred center of the matter, the place so near to you that you have used it every day of your life, and yet perhaps have never paused long enough to feel its creative majesty. I speak of the name I am, not as a doctrine for argument, not as a phrase to be admired from a distance, but as the very root of lived reality. Before every condition there is I am. Before every story, before every fear, before every account, before every bill, before every hope of more, before every memory of less, there is first this quiet fact of being, I am. You can doubt many things, but you cannot doubt that you are. Before you say who you are, what you lack, what you fear, what you hope will happen tomorrow, you must first say inwardly, I am. It is the gate through which every identity passes. It is the name before all names. It is the awareness of being itself. And because it is the awareness of being, whatever you join to it becomes clothed with life. Whatever you join to I am becomes the state you occupy. Whatever state you occupy becomes the world you meet. This is why I say it slowly now, so it may sink beneath the surface mind. I am is not merely descriptive, it is formative. It does not simply report what is, it helps create what is. Men imagine they are merely telling the truth about themselves when they say, I am behind, or I am tired of struggling, or I am not good with money. They think these are innocent observations. They think they are merely naming facts, but they are doing something far more powerful than reporting. They are selecting a state. They are clothing the sacred name in a garment, and the world, being obedient to the garment worn, begins again to mirror it. People have been silently naming themselves for years. Most do not know they are doing it. They think identity is something that just happened to them. They think their reactions are natural and therefore harmless. They think the inner phrases repeated in secret do not matter because no one hears them. But the deeper self hears them. The subconscious hears them. The creative law hears them. It does not wait for public speech. It responds to inward naming. It responds to what you say yourself to be when the door is closed and the world is not watching. How many have said inwardly, I am behind, and then watched time seem to chase them? How many have said, I am unlucky, and then seem to meet one disappointment after another? How many have said, I am always struggling, and then found struggle woven into even the smallest things? How many have whispered, I am bad with money, and then lived inside that assumption as though it were a law carved into stone? Yet these are not eternal truths, they are decrees, and decrees may be withdrawn, garments may be changed. You see, the issue is not just money itself, the issue is the identity around money. A man may desire greater income, but if he lives from I am the one who never quite has enough, then enough remains psychologically alien to him. A woman may long for ease, but if she lives from I am the one who must always carry the burden, then burden keeps finding her, because it belongs to the state she has named as self. Money then becomes only one expression of a deeper identity. Change the figures without changing the self, and the old story often recreates itself in new form. Change the self, and the figures or their equivalent must eventually rearrange. This is why I have told you that appearances are shadows. And now I say something even more intimate. Identity is the lamp behind the shadow. I am is the point of origin. It is the place from which the whole money story is being told. If you join I am to delay, delay becomes intimate. If you join I am to lack, lack becomes familiar. If you join I am to fear, fear becomes the atmosphere through which every money matter is interpreted. But if you join I am to being supported, to being supplied, to being safe, to being led, then life must begin to echo that new inner name. Let us go more deeply. Suppose a man wakes each morning with the thought, I am under pressure. Perhaps he does not say it aloud. Perhaps he only feels it. Yet it colors the whole day. The body tightens. Decisions come from contraction. Money is looked at through a lens of threat. Even opportunity may be approached with fear, because the underlying identity is pressure. Now another man wakes, and through practice, through understanding, through repeated dwelling in a different state, begins to feel I am supported. The same day may still present tasks. Letters may still arrive. Work may still be done. Yet the atmosphere is different. The man is different. He does not meet money as an enemy. He meets it as one already anchored in supply. The outer responses begin quietly to differ because the inward naming has changed. This is why I say again that I am is sacred, not because it belongs only in solemn rooms or ancient texts, but because it is the living center of creation in man. Whatever follows it, you tend to become. Whatever feeling clings to it, life tends to express. I am forgotten. Then life mirrors neglect. I am overlooked. Then life mirrors delay. I am always trying. Then life mirrors effort without rest. I am not the kind of person who has money. Then money remains foreign, as though it belongs to another tribe of being. Do you see how intimate this is? The whole financial world a person lives in may be hanging from the inner branch of one small phrase, repeated often enough to become identity. The world would have you believe that you are merely describing your circumstances, but I tell you, you are often naming your future. I am behind does not leave the mind where it was spoken. It enters the feeling, it enters the body, it enters expectation. It begins to organize attention and action and possibility around itself. The one who says, I am behind, often hurries, braces, fears, misjudges, postpones peace, and thereby keeps proving the sentence. It is a circle. The decree creates the feeling creates the response creates the outer echo, and the outer echo seems to confirm the decree. But the circle can be broken at the root. It can be broken where the naming begins. There is something profoundly freeing in this. For if your financial world has been named by your own identity, then your identity need not remain what it has been. You are not condemned to the old inner title. You are not chained forever to the old secret phrases. You may have used I am carelessly for years. Yes, you may have clothed it in fatigue, pressure, lack, bad timing, misfortune, inherited fear, and old family sayings about money. But the same creative center that wore those garments can now wear another. This must not be made harsh. I do not want you to become afraid of your own speech. Fear is only another wrong garment. I want you to become aware, gentle and aware, tender with the sacred name. When you notice the old phrase rising, do not condemn yourself, simply see it for what it is. Ah, that is a decree, not a fact. That is a garment, not my essence. And then, quietly, you begin to choose again. Imagine the difference between these two inner worlds. In one, the old phrases, I am behind, I am always catching up, I am bad with money, I am the one who struggles, I am not safe. In the other, a new naming begins to enter. I am provided for, I am safely supplied, I am guided, I am steadied, I am learning to feel money as natural, I am one for whom support is normal. These are not merely pleasant alternatives. They are different states of being, different climates, different seeds, different worlds in embryonic form. The mind may protest and say, but what if the old sentence feels more believable? Of course it may at first. It has been repeated, it has been practiced, it has been emotionally fed. The body has been trained into its atmosphere. But repetition has no right to permanence. It only means habit. And habit yields to a new identity faithfully returned to. The sacred name does not insist on wearing only yesterday's clothing. It will wear what you persist in joining to it. This is why no human being need remain the prisoner of his former self-definition. Now I want you to feel the tenderness of this truth. Before money changes outside, money changes inside as identity. Before supply shows itself in the world, supply must be allowed as self-concept. Before freedom from strain appears in outer figures, freedom from strain must become part of what you quietly call yourself. The financial life you live is tied to what you have joined to I am, not as punishment, as correspondence, not as cruelty, as law. So let us say it plainly and slowly now, not with harshness, but with revelation. I have been naming my financial world with my own identity. Let that truth land softly. I have been naming it. I have been saying inwardly who I am around money, around supply, around timing, around ease, around enough. And life has been reflecting the name I gave it. If that is so, then another truth follows with equal certainty. If I change what I join to I am, my world must change. Not perhaps, must. For the world cannot long keep showing one mirror image when the face has truly changed. It may lag, it may echo the old for a little while, but the source has moved, and what moves at the source cannot remain forever unapparent. Change the decree, and the body changes. Change the body's atmosphere, and behavior changes. Change behavior's atmosphere, and the bridge of incidents changes. Change the root, and the fruit must in time tell the story. This is the sacred center, not a technique only, but a way of understanding your very being. The name I am in you is always active. It is always selecting. It is always clothing itself. Tonight, you are not asked to shout. You are not asked to strain. You are asked to become conscious of the sacred act already taking place within you, to notice what you have joined to the name, to release what no longer serves, to begin even softly, even drowsily, even imperfectly, to clothe I am in something truer, kinder, richer, steadier than the old money story you have worn for too long. And perhaps as you lie here, you may begin to feel it. Not all at once, but like a lamp being lit in another room. The realization that the story of money has never been only about money. It has been about who you have believed yourself to be in relation to supply. And because identity shapes circumstance, the moment identity changes, the whole direction of life begins to turn. Now we must go still deeper. For many hear these truths and immediately try to turn them into words alone. They think that if they can only repeat the proper sentence often enough, if they can only say the right thing with the lips, then the law must obey. But the law does not answer words as words. It answers feeling. It answers the inward sense of reality. It answers what the subconscious accepts as natural. This is why I have said again and again, and I say it now very softly, because softness helps truth enter more deeply. Feeling is the secret. Words without feeling are weak. Not wrong, but weak. They are like seeds laid on stone instead of in soil. They may be correct in form, even beautiful in form, and yet they do not take root because no living emotional agreement has received them. A man may say, I am abundant, but if he says it with the inward posture of one still afraid, the subconscious does not receive abundance, it receives fear. A woman may whisper, I am supplied, but if beneath the phrase her whole body is still running, still bracing, still asking, will this ever happen, then the subconscious does not receive supply, it receives chase. It receives not yet. This is not cruelty, it is precision. The subconscious responds to what feels true and familiar. It responds to the emotional signature beneath the phrase. It responds to what the body believes, what the nervous system recognizes, what the inner self has accepted as normal. The subconscious is not moved by performance. It is not flattered by correct wording. It is impressed by reality as felt. That is why imagination without felt reality remains thin. It may entertain the surface mind for a few moments, but it does not sink deeply enough to become creative substance until feeling close it. Consider how easily human beings prove this in the negative direction. A man imagines disaster for a moment and his chest tightens immediately. A woman remembers an old humiliation and her whole body responds as though it were happening now. The subconscious does not ask whether the scene is occurring in the outer world at this exact moment. It responds to the felt reality. If imagination joined to fear can do this, then imagination joined to relief can do the opposite. If an inward scene can produce tension as though danger were present, then an inward scene can produce ease as though support were present. The law works in both directions. Feeling is what gives the imaginal act its blood, its weight, its power. This is why most people fail even when they use beautiful words. They repeat phrases from the wrong state. They say abundance while feeling shortage. They say freedom while feeling pressure. They say security while still breathing like the hunted. They imagine wealth while inwardly remaining the one who longs for wealth from a distance. And longing is not having. Longing is still absence decorated with hope. So the subconscious faithfully preserves the distance. Not because the person lacks sincerity, but because the emotional atmosphere has not changed. Relief, safety, support, enoughness, ease, and quiet certainty. These are the true inner signatures of wealth. Not the paper alone, not the figures alone, not the loud claim. These states are what money symbolizes to the human heart. If money would make you feel safer, then safety is part of the wealth state. If money would allow the shoulders to drop, then relief is part of the wealth state. If money would quiet the inner race of thought, then enoughness and ease belong to the wealth state. If money would make you feel no longer hunted by tomorrow, then support and quiet certainty are the deeper form of what you truly seek. So when I speak to you of attracting money naturally, I am not really asking you to worship numbers. I am asking you to enter the emotional climate in which money is no longer a threat, no longer a distant visitor, no longer a miracle that belongs to others, but part of a life inwardly organized around support. That climate feels different in the body. The breath changes, the chest changes, the eyes change. The whole nervous system stops leaning so far forward in fear. That is why the body must be included. Feeling is not a little ornament placed upon words. Feeling is the body's acceptance of a state. Excitement is not the same as possession. This too must be understood, for many confuse the two. They believe that if they are not wildly thrilled, then they are not manifesting correctly. They try to whip themselves into emotional brightness. They try to feel fireworks, but fireworks do not build lives. Fireworks flash and disappear. Possession is quieter. Possession is steadier. Possession does not scream because it does not need to. It rests. It knows. It has no need to dramatize itself. When something is truly yours, your feeling about it becomes remarkably ordinary. You do not wake each morning shouting over the fact that your bed is still yours. You do not celebrate every breath because it continues. You do not stand before the mirror in astonishment that your own face is there. Familiar possession is calm. It is normal. It carries the tone of course. This is why excitement can actually reveal distance. It often belongs to the state of approach, to the thrill of maybe, to the tension of almost there. But quiet certainty belongs to the state of already, and the subconscious responds more deeply to already than to almost. Most people imagine wealth from wanting, not from having. That single mistake explains so much. They picture the money arriving, and in their imagining there is still the energy of waiting, of reaching, of when this happens then. They remain outside the house looking at it, yearning toward it, thinking of it. They have not entered, they have not sat down, they have not inhabited the state from within. The imaginal act may be vivid, Yes, but if the emotional posture is still one of wanting, the subconscious receives wanting, and wanting, if made natural, produces more situations in which one continues to want. So the whole shift is from thinking of wealth to feeling from wealth, from saying abundance while trembling inwardly to allowing the body feeling of being supported to become real. It is possible to say, I am supplied, with a hidden chase in the heart. It is possible to say, I am abundant, while the belly remains tight, the breath shallow, the shoulders guarded. In that case, the statement is not yet a decree of being. It is still an attempt. It is still an effortful hope. And the subconscious is not moved by effortful hope. It is moved by inward naturalness. Let us make the contrast very plain. A man says, I am abundant, but he says it while watching the clock, fearing the next expense, calculating how long he can hold on. The words speak abundance. The body speaks fear. The subconscious obeys fear. A woman says, I am supplied, but inwardly she feels chased, pressured, hurried, braced. The words speak supply. The nervous system speaks lack. The subconscious obeys the chase. Now compare that with another state entirely. A man does not say very much, perhaps, but inwardly he has allowed relief to enter him. His breath is calmer. His chest is softer. He feels, even if only for moments at first, that he is handled, held, supported. That feeling becomes familiar. The subconscious receives support. Or a woman lies down, and instead of begging for rescue, she lets herself feel safe now, quiet now, already cared for now. The subconscious receives care. Do you see the difference? In one, the phrase and the feeling are divided. In the other, the feeling carries the truth. Words may still be used, yes, but only as gentle doors into the state, not as substitutes for it. The phrase is there to lead the body into agreement, to invite the feeling, to soften the nervous system toward acceptance. Once the feeling becomes present, the phrase has done its real work. Then the subconscious is being impressed in the only language it truly understands. This is why repetition must not become mechanical. There is no power in muttering a sentence 100 times while remaining emotionally unchanged. One true felt moment of relief can be more creative than hours of strained repetition. One inward sigh of it is handled felt in the body can go deeper than 1,000 frantic affirmations. The subconscious does not measure by quantity. It measures by acceptance. It asks, in effect, not how many times did you say it, but did you feel it as natural? Did your body begin to believe it? Did your inner self stop resisting the state? And this is where gentleness becomes so important. For feeling cannot be beaten into existence. You cannot command the body to trust by shouting at it. You cannot create safety through violence. You cannot force ease with tension. The state must be invited. It must be approached like sleep itself, quietly, naturally, indirectly, almost. You soften the body. You loosen the breath. You use a phrase, perhaps, but softly. You enter a simple imaginal act. You allow the shoulders to drop as though it were already done. And the moment the body begins to respond, the state is becoming real. Perhaps you have noticed this already, even in small ways. There are moments when you say to yourself, it will be all right, and nothing happens because the words are dry and the body does not agree. But there are other moments when a deeper tone enters, and suddenly the breath eases, the face softens, and you feel an actual wave of relief. The difference is feeling. In one case, the words remain on the surface. In the other, they descend into the body and become truth for that moment. That moment is creative. That moment is the seed. So let the true signatures of wealth become clearer to you now. Wealth is felt as relief. Wealth is felt as safety. Wealth is felt as support. Wealth is felt as enoughness. Wealth is felt as ease. Wealth is felt as quiet certainty, not boastfulness, not frenzy, not display, quiet certainty. The kind that says, without noise, I am no longer fighting tomorrow. I am no longer being hunted by numbers. I am no longer standing outside support. I am already under it. This may be the first time some have really understood why their previous efforts brought so little peace. They used correct ideas, perhaps, but from the wrong body state. They tried to say abundance while living in internal contraction. They tried to imagine money while secretly remaining identified with lack. They confused verbal affirmation with felt assumption. But now the door opens differently. What manifests is what feels natural, not merely what is repeated. Let that enter you slowly. What manifests is what feels natural, not merely what is repeated. And once you know this, everything becomes more honest and more merciful. You no longer need to pretend. You no longer need to perform abundance in a forced voice. You only need to begin teaching the body a different normal. One breath at a time, one soft imaginal act at a time, one inward return to relief at a time, one moment of supportedness at a time. You are not trying to deceive the subconscious. You are retraining it in truth. You are giving it the emotional climate from which it can finally build something different. So do not ask now merely, what words shall I say? Ask instead, what feeling would be true if I were already supported? What would my chest feel like? What would my breathing feel like? What would my shoulders do? What would money mean in my body if it were no longer danger but supply? These questions lead you towards state, and state is where creation begins. For the law does not wait upon your vocabulary, it waits upon your acceptance. Stay near that now. Let the words become softer. Let the pressure to say something perfectly fall away. Let the body learn what safety feels like. Let the breath learn what enoughness feels like. Let the nervous system learn what support feels like. Let quiet certainty become less foreign. That is the real work. That is the secret. Feeling is the secret. And what feels natural becomes the life you meet. Now let us go one step further, because unless this is understood deeply, the mind will continue to chase the outer symbol and miss the inner state that gives the symbol its meaning. Money is not merely paper. It is not merely figures in an account book. It is not merely coins, wages, notes, statements, balances, or arithmetic. Those are only its outer garments. They are the visible form. But the human heart is never truly seeking paper. It is seeking what paper seems to promise. What people truly seek through money is relief. They seek ease. They seek dignity. They seek room to breathe. They seek safety. They seek the end of that inward bracing that has become so familiar that many no longer notice it until it softens. They seek the quiet permission to live without the constant pressure of not enough. They seek the feeling that life is not closing in on them from every side. They seek a softer chest, a quieter mind, a calmer morning, a more open future. This is what money means in feeling. This is why the outer symbol has such emotional power. It appears to offer an inner climate, but here again the world has reversed the order. It says get the money and then the relief will come. Get the figures and then the ease will come. Fill the account and then the body may rest. Yet I tell you the state must come first, not in the outer form perhaps, but in the inner acceptance. For unless the climate changes, money may come, and still the old fear remains to poison it. A person can receive and still feel unsafe. A person can possess and still live in the state of scarcity. A person can have more and yet continue inwardly to shrink around life, because wealth as figures arrive before wealth as identity. Wealth as a state is quiet. It is not theatrical. It is not a constant surge of excitement. It is not the feverish thrill of one who has finally grasped at something after years of running. It is quieter than that. It is more settled. It is more ordinary. It does not feel like fireworks. It feels like the lamp in the room has been lit, and one need no longer stumble in the dark. It feels like the shoulders are no longer carrying invisible stones. It feels like the breath has space around it. The world imagines wealth must feel loud, dramatic, astonishing. But true money normality is calm. It is not an emotional spectacle. It is the disappearance of the old emotional spectacle. It is the absence of panic. It is the end of the sharp inward contractions around simple things. It is opening a letter without the body preparing for bad news. It is seeing a number without the stomach dropping. It is hearing about expenses without immediately shrinking inwardly. It is moving through the little rituals of daily life without that familiar undertow of dread. Being supplied naturally feels like of course, not I hope. Feel that difference. I hope belongs to distance. I hope still stands outside the house. I hope is the posture of one who has not yet entered, but of course belongs to what is ordinary. Of course belongs to what is already accepted. Of course is how you relate to what has become normal. You do not hope the sun will rise in the morning. You expect it in the quietest possible way. You do not hope that a familiar door will still be in your house when you wake. It is simply there. This is the feeling tone of natural wealth, not a desperate wish, a quiet, of course. Why is this so important? Because the subconscious obeys what is ordinary to it. It obeys what feels natural. It obeys what no longer seems strange. So long as wealth feels extraordinary, distant, unnatural, belonging to others, it remains psychologically outside your dwelling place. But the moment supply begins to feel ordinary in you, the moment the body stops treating it as a rare visitor and begins treating it as home, the deeper law is being engaged. Normality is the true doorway. Let me describe this more intimately, in the language of the body, because the body tells the truth about what has become normal. Wealth as normality feels like a quiet exhale, a long one perhaps, or not even long, only unforced. the sort of breath that comes when the inner sentinel has stopped standing with its spear raised. It feels like softened shoulders, not because you remembered to perform relaxation, but because there is nothing in you now that insists upon carrying the old invisible burden. It feels like a face that no longer guards itself against tomorrow. It feels like no panic when looking at numbers. Think of what that means. Numbers may still be there. They may still be handled. They may still require action, yes, but they no longer command your nervous system. They no longer decide your identity. You can look at them with calm eyes, with the steadiness of one who knows that the visible figure is not the source, only a report. That calm itself is wealth in seed form. It feels like no fear in opening letters. Many have trained their bodies to tighten at the mere sight of a sealed envelope or a folded paper laid upon a table. The hand moves toward it already braced. The chest contracts before the mind has even read a word. But wealth as normality means that fear has lost its automatic throne. One opens what must be opened without inward shrinking. The body no longer associates paper with danger. There is room, there is steadiness, there is the feeling, whatever this is, I remain supported. It feels like no inner shrinking around simple needs. This too is one of the hidden marks of lack as identity. A person becomes anxious over ordinary things. The smallest purchase is felt as threat. The simplest need is met with guilt or fear. There is constant calculation, not from wisdom, but from pressure. The soul begins to feel it must apologize for needing, for resting, for receiving, for living at all. But when supply becomes normal, simple needs no longer feel like accusations. They are simply part of life. One may meet them without inward shame. That is dignity. That is room. That is wealth in feeling before it becomes wealth in visible shape. And above all, wealth as normality carries a sense of this is handled. I want that phrase to sink very deeply. This is handled. Not necessarily by the surface mind, not necessarily by immediate visible proof, but inwardly handled, settled at the level of state, no longer a matter of desperate uncertainty. This is handled is one of the true fragrances of supply. It is what the chest feels like when fear loosens. It is what the breath feels like when tomorrow is no longer treated as an enemy. It is what the mind feels like when it stops circling the same problem in the belief that circling is control. Now notice how different this is from theatrical ideas of wealth. There is no need here for grand displays. No need to imagine yourself shouting with joy over a sum. No need to strain for some dramatic emotional climax. Such excitement is often still the feeling of distance. It says something amazing has come from far away to rescue me. But true money normality is more intimate than rescue. It is more like homecoming. It is more like the body remembering a climate it was always meant to live in. A person living from money normality does not react to every financial matter as though it were a threat to existence. He is not inwardly startled by support. She is not emotionally overwhelmed by the idea of being provided for. The whole being has become more accustomed to a different sky. There is more room in the day, more ease in decisions, less bracing in the chest, less old shame around receiving, less old fear around giving. The inner atmosphere has changed. This is why the real aim is not to chase money, but to make supply feel normal. Chasing keeps the thing ahead of you. Normality brings it inward. Chasing says, come to me from somewhere else. Normality says, become at home in me. Chasing keeps the nervous system in motion. Normality teaches it how to rest. And what the subconscious can rest in, it can create from. What remains foreign to it, it delays. So if you wish to know whether you are truly moving toward wealth in the Neville sense, do not ask first, have the numbers changed yet? Ask, what has become more normal in me? Is relief more accessible? Is safety less foreign? Can I breathe a little more easily when I think of money? Can I open a letter with less dread? Can I look at a figure without collapsing inwardly? Can I feel simple needs without shame? Can I let the phrase, this is handled, rest in my body for even a few moments without resistance? These are profound signs, for they indicate that the inner climate is changing, and the inner climate always precedes the visible weather. Many have wasted years chasing money with the same frightened nervous system that would not have known how to keep peace even if money had arrived. But you are learning something gentler and far more powerful. You are learning to make supply normal. You are learning to let the body become familiar with support. You are learning to let relief become less rare. You are learning that money, in its deepest meaning, is not the object of worship, but the outer shadow of an inwardly settled state. This is why I speak so much of calm, because calm is not emptiness. Calm is one of the most powerful emotional signatures of wealth. Not laziness, not indifference. Calm, the calm of one who is no longer inwardly hunted. The calm of one who no longer turns every figure into fate. The calm of one who has stopped making numbers into gods. The calm of one for whom supply is becoming natural, ordinary, expected, and safe. And so let this understanding deepen as you lie here. Money is not merely paper, figures, or accounts. It is what those things seem to promise: relief, ease, dignity, room, safety, freedom from bracing. And because these are states before they are symbols, they may be entered now, not perfectly perhaps at first, but truly, softly, naturally, quietly. The real aim is not to chase money, but to make supply feel normal. Let that settle into you like a deeper permission. The real aim is not to chase money, but to make supply feel normal. And what becomes normal to the subconscious becomes the world it begins to express. Now we come to the holy hour, the quiet threshold that so few understand, and yet almost all pass through every night. I do not call it holy because it belongs to ritual, in the outer sense. I call it holy because it is fertile. I call it holy because it is receptive. I call it holy because what is impressed there does not remain a passing thought. It sinks, it enters, it begins to live as tomorrow. Before sleep, the rational guard weakens. This is one of the great mercies of human life. All day long, the reasoning mind argues. It compares, it measures, it looks at facts and calls them final. It remembers old disappointments and uses them as evidence against tomorrow. It demands proof before permission. It says, how can this be true? How will it happen? Where is the sign? Where is the guarantee? It is not evil. It is simply trained to live by appearances. But before sleep, that guard begins to loosen. You may have noticed this many times without naming it. The mind that was sharp an hour ago becomes softer. The hard edges of logic begin to blur. Thoughts lose some of their force. The old inward prosecutor, so quick to object during the day, grows quieter. The body grows heavy, and because the body grows heavy, the mind loses some of its old authority. It can no longer command with the same certainty. It can no longer keep watch in the same way. And that is why this moment matters so deeply. The conscious mind loses its grip, not all at once perhaps, but enough. Enough that what would have been resisted in broad daylight may now be allowed. Enough that what felt impossible at noon may seem almost simple in the hush before sleep. Enough that the old story loses some of its tyranny. The grip loosens, and in that loosening there is room. Room for a new feeling. Room for a different conclusion. Room for a state that the day would have argued against. The senses soften too. The room fades. The weight of the day begins to recede. The facts that pressed on you at morning and afternoon no longer stand with the same force before the inner eye. Old evidence becomes less tyrannical. It may still be remembered, yes, but it does not strike with the same hardness. It is as though the senses, which were judges all day long, grow drowsy and less certain of their authority. They no longer insist quite so loudly that what is visible is the only truth. In that softening, a deeper truth may enter. This is why I say the borderland before sleep is the most fertile point of creation. It is fertile not because it is dramatic, but because it is undefended. The subconscious is more open there, more receptive, less guarded. During the day, one may try to impress it through force and repetition, but the conscious mind keeps interfering, keeps objecting, keeps saying, no, that is not so. No, I have seen otherwise. No, the outer facts disagree. But at the edge of sleep, the old defender grows tired. The gate is not locked in the same way. The soil is not hard in the same way. The subconscious stands open and receives more readily what is gently given to it. What is accepted in this borderland sinks more deeply. Let that be understood. Not what is merely said, but what is accepted. Not what is repeated mechanically, but what is felt as real enough to enter. If before sleep you accept fear, fear sinks. If before sleep you accept tension, tension sinks. If before sleep you rehearse lack, lack sinks. This is why so many wake into the same old climate. They planted it the night before without knowing. They crossed the threshold carrying anxiety and then wondered why the morning echoed it. But if before sleep you accept relief, relief sinks. If you accept safety, safety sinks. If you accept that being supplied is natural, that feeling goes deeper than argument. It enters where tomorrow is formed. It begins to impress the subconscious not as an idea to be considered, but as a state to be lived from. And the subconscious, faithful as ever, begins to express it. This is why sleep is not escape here. It is impression and entry. You are not escaping life when you sleep. You are entering the deeper chamber where life takes shape. You are not disappearing from the creative process. You are moving more deeply into it. The world believes sleep is the pause between days. I tell you, sleep is the womb of the next day. What you carry into it becomes instruction. What you feel there becomes seed. What you accept there becomes the secret atmosphere from which outer events will later rise. Nighttime matters because the new state can be planted without daytime resistance. The day is noisy. The day is full of reminders, memories, habits, conversations, pressures, clocks, figures, faces, and all the little things that keep the old state reinforced. But night loosens that whole arrangement. The senses dim, the body grows still, the world recedes, and because the world recedes, the new state may be introduced with greater tenderness and less contradiction. That is why I have led you this far, not into effort, but into softness. I do not want to teach you to fight the mind at night. I want to teach you to use the natural mercy of drowsiness. The old mind is tired then. The old resistance is weary. The day's arguments are less sharp. The old evidence no longer stands like a tyrant over the soul. This is the hour when the subconscious will listen without so much protest. This is the hour when what is gently felt may enter more deeply than what is fiercely insisted upon. There is something almost sacred in that, is there not? That the very condition humans so often treat as ordinary, as the mere closing of the eyes, is in truth a doorway. That the moment before sleep, when one feels most unguarded, may also be the moment of greatest quiet power. That one need not wait for some dramatic spiritual occasion. One already passes through a holy threshold every night. So tonight matters, not in a pressured way, not in the sense that one night must solve all things, but in the sense that the threshold is real, the doorway is real. The borderland is fertile. The moment before sleep is creative. And because it is creative, you need not waste it by carrying the old fear into it again. You need not feed the old shortage once more. You need not rehearse the same pain until morning. You may use the holy hour differently now. I want you to feel the tenderness of this. You are not being asked to become superhuman at the edge of sleep. You are not being asked to master some rigid technique by force. You are being invited to enter the most natural doorway there is, to allow the body to grow heavy, to allow the senses to soften, to allow the conscious grip to loosen, and then in that softened place to let a new state be accepted, quietly, naturally, gently, as one lets a final thought accompany the body into rest, because what goes with you there does not remain outside. It enters, it settles, it begins to work below the level of immediate sight. A fearful state carried into sleep becomes tomorrow's atmosphere. A supported state carried into sleep becomes tomorrow's beginning. The subconscious does not sleep in the same way the conscious mind sleeps. It receives, it continues, it builds, it shapes, it brings forth in outer form what was taken in as inward fact. So do not think of sleep as absence tonight. Think of it as descent. Think of it as planting. Think of it as passing inward through a softer gate, where the old arguments lose strength and the new state may be impressed without noise. Think of it as the hour when life is most ready to listen. Think of it as the borderland where you may stop obeying yesterday's evidence and begin giving tomorrow a different route. The moment before sleep is creative. Let that sentence become warm in you. The moment before sleep is creative, not merely restful. Creative, not merely a fading out, an entering in, a sacred threshold between what has been and what may now be inwardly chosen. The night is not asking you to run. It is asking you to plant. It is not asking you to prove. It is asking you to accept. It is not asking you to overcome by force. It is asking you to soften enough to receive. And perhaps now you can feel why I speak so quietly, why I do not want to agitate the mind with too much outer cleverness. This hour is not for argument. It is for impression. It is for the slow laying down of a new atmosphere in the depths where the subconscious waits. The body grows still. The room fades. The old facts become less tyrannical. The guard loosens. The doorway opens. Tonight matters. The moment before sleep is creative. And in that knowing, you may begin to prepare inwardly for what comes next. Now let me make this very simple for you, because the mind has a way of taking the gentlest law and turning it into labor. It hears of imagination and immediately wants to build a great machinery. It wants a perfect sequence, a long story, a detailed performance, some elaborate inner theater that can be judged and improved. But that is not the way. You do not need a complicated technique. You do not need to become an artist of mental strain. You do not need to produce some grand spectacle before sleep. The law is far kinder than that. Do not create a long mental drama. The subconscious does not require a play. It does not need many scenes, many characters, many explanations, many moving parts. Complexity often belongs to the conscious mind, because the conscious mind likes to feel busy, but the deeper mind responds to implication. to feeling, to the simple inward knowing that the thing is already so. So keep it short, keep it gentle, keep it easy enough that you can actually do it in drowsiness without effort. Choose one short imaginal act that implies fulfillment. One small moment, no more. Not the whole bridge, not the whole future, not all the steps by which money arrives, not the labor of explaining how this one spoke to that one, and how that opportunity appeared, and how the figures changed line by line. Leave all that to the law. Your task is only the end. One little scene that would be true if you were already supplied. One small act that would naturally occur if the matter were already settled. The scene must be from the end, not from the process. This is most important. If you imagine the money coming, you may still be in the state of waiting for it. If you imagine the struggle to get it, you are still inside the process of not yet. If you imagine yourself asking and hoping and reaching, then you are still telling the subconscious the story of distance. No, go beyond all that. Enter the after. Enter the state in which the thing is already done. Let the scene imply completion, not pursuit. Let it imply that the burden has already lifted. Perhaps you see the words paid in full, not watched from far away, but seen close, as your own. Perhaps you hear a calm voice say, "It's all handled now," not in some dramatic tone, but naturally, quietly, almost ordinarily. Perhaps you hold a paper that confirms abundance, and your hands are steady because nothing in you is startled by support anymore. Perhaps you hear someone say, "I'm so happy everything worked out for you," and your response is not astonishment, but the calm feeling of yes, of course. Perhaps you see yourself paying calmly, without the old tightening, moving through the act as one for whom supply is normal. Or perhaps your scene is even simpler still. You are sitting quietly at home, and everything feels in order. Nothing presses, nothing hunts you. The room is ordinary, the tea is warm perhaps, the breath is easy, and the inward atmosphere says, "This is handled." You see how simple this is. The power is not in. It must carry the emotional truth of already. That is all. It must say to the deeper mind, without explaining itself too much, "The matter is finished. I am no longer waiting outside it." And the scene must be lived from within, not watched from outside. This too is very important. Do not stand at a distance and watch yourself as though you were someone else. Do not turn the imaginal act into a little moving picture on a far wall. And hear through your own ears. Feel with your own hands. If the scene is a paper, feel its texture. If it is a voice, hear its tone. If it is a room, sense the quiet around you. If it is relief, let the body actually soften as though the news were already true. For what the subconscious receives most deeply is not what you observe as a spectator, but what you inhabit as reality. The whole secret is to move from watching fulfill. The other is feeling from. One keeps the desire a little way off. The other allows you to step into its atmosphere. That atmosphere is the creative thing. The aim is not thrill, but naturalness. I must say that again, because many make this mistake. They think the imaginal act is successful only if it excites them. They want a surge, they want ecstasy, they want to be dazzled by it. But the feeling of possession is usually much quieter than. When something is truly yours, your response to it becomes strangely calm. It becomes familiar. It takes on the tone of ordinary reality. So do not chase a dramatic feeling. Chase the feeling of naturalness. Chase the feeling that the matter is no longer pressing because it has already been settled in consciousness. This is why the body must reflect relief while you imagine. Let the shoulders lower, let the chest widen, let the belly release, let the jaw soften, let the hands become easy. These are not little decorations, they are the body's agreement with the state. If you imagine paid in full, while the whole body remains rigid and hunted, then the old state still holds the throne. But if as you imagine the body begins to say yes, the nervous system begins to uncoil, and the whole being tastes even a little of the relief of already having, then the state is becoming real enough to impress the subconscious. Now perhaps you are wondering which scene is best. The best scene is the one that feels simple and plausible to your own heart. It should be short enough to repeat without weariness, natural enough to enter without strain, and final enough to imply that the thing is already accomplished. It should not require too much effort to maintain. It should be like a small doorway, not a labyrinth. For one person, seeing paid in full will be enough. Those for another, hearing "it's all handled now" may carry greater relief. For another, holding a paper that confirms abundance may feel most real. For another, hearing the warm words, "I'm so happy everything worked out for you," may be the perfect touch because it places them gently in the after, where the event is no longer new, only true. For another, the act of paying calmly may undo years of tension more effectively than. And for some, the best scene may simply be sitting quietly at home, with that deep and ordinary feeling that everything is in order. Choose what gives your body the easiest access to relief. That is the secret, not what sounds most impressive, not what would look best if described to another. What gives your body the easiest access to the emotional climate of being supplied, because the body tells you where the state is landing. If the body softens, if the breath widens, if the old panic recedes, if the room in you grows larger, then the scene is doing its work. Now do not force the scene, enter it lightly. If you are already drowsy, all the better. Let it come almost as one drifts into memory. Let it be repeated gently, not rapidly, not with nervous insistence, but with the softness of something already familiar. Rock it a little in consciousness, again and again, but never violently. The point is not to hammer it into the mind. The point is to let it become real enough that the subconscious can accept it without protest. If the mind wanders, do not be troubled. Simply return. If another thought arises, let it pass and come back. If the scene feels thin at first, do not condemn yourself. Touch it again. Add a little sensory reality. Feel the paper. Hear the. And if drowsiness deepens and the scene begins to dissolve into feeling alone, that is often best of all, for the feeling may remain when the picture fades, and it is the feeling that does the deepest work. You see now how simple this can be. You do not need a dozen methods. You do not need to fight the mind. You do not need to become technically brilliant. You need only one short imaginal act, from the end, lived from within, carrying the quiet. That is enough, more than enough. A small true act felt naturally is more powerful than a great strained performance. And because it is so simple, you can do this tonight. That is important. I do not want this to remain a beautiful idea you admire from a distance. I want it to feel close enough, kind enough, natural enough that tonight as you move towards sleep, you may choose your one little scene and step into it softly. So let the mind hear this and relax. I do not need a complicated technique. I can do this simply and softly. Yes, simply and softly. One short scene, from the end, felt from within, the body reflecting relief, the whole being moving, if only for moments at first, into the naturalness of already being supplied. That is all, and that is enough. Now I want to place in your hands something very simple, only a small inward decree that can be carried across the threshold of sleep, like a soft lamp in the dark. Something gentle enough to repeat without effort, something steady enough to quiet the old state, something simple enough that the deeper mind can receive it without resistance. You see, inner speech is continuous prayer. It does not begin when you fold the hands. It does not begin only when you are frightened or only when you enter some quiet room to ask. Inner speech is always going on, all day and often all night, beneath the surface. The soul is speaking to itself. It comments, it concludes, it names, it predicts, it whispers judgments and expectations, and little secret verdicts. And because it is continuous, it is formative. What is whispered inwardly, night after night, becomes the accepted atmosphere of life. This is why so many people live. They say, "I'm always pressured." They say, "It never seems easy for me." They say, "Something always goes wrong." They say, "I can't relax until the money comes." And though these may seem like passing thoughts, repeated often enough, they become climate. The subconscious hears them, receives them, and begins to arrange the outer world according to their tone. Not because it is cruel, but because it is faithful. So tonight, I want, not dramatically, not by fighting the old words, not by shouting over fear, but by giving the deeper mind a simpler atmosphere to dwell in. A phrase that feels like rest, a phrase that carries normality, a phrase that does not ask the world to do something first, but quietly assumes the truth inwardly, now. The phrase is not magic by wording. I must make that clear. There is no charm in a sentence merely because the words are. The phrase is only the doorway. The phrase is the hand that gently opens the inner room. Once the room is open, the feeling enters. So do not worship the sentence. Use it. Let it lead you into the body feeling of already being held, already being supported, already being supplied. The central inward decree I want to give you is very simple. I am already provided. I am safely supplied. It is natural. There is such mercy in the word already. It removes tomorrow from the throne. It does not say, I hope provision will come. It says, provision belongs to my state now. I am already provided. Let the body hear that. Let the shoulders hear it. Let the chest hear it. Let the old nervous system, so trained in waiting, begin to hear a different truth. Then softly, I am safely supplied. Not only supplied, but safely. Because many have thought of money as something uncertain, something that comes and goes, something that gives relief only to threaten its removal again. But this phrase does not merely offer supply, it offers supply joined to safety. It tells the deeper self, I do not need to brace, I do not need to fear support. I may feel held, I may feel carried, I may feel safe in being supplied. Then it is natural for me. This too is essential. For the subconscious does not respond most deeply to what is desired as strange. It responds to what is accepted as natural. So the phrase is not asking for a miracle from far away. It is saying gently, steadily, this belongs in my world. This belongs in my body. This belongs in my life. It is natural for me. That phrase changes the atmosphere entirely. It takes supply out of the realm of rare rescue and places. You must not repeat like a beggar. That is the old mistake. Many hear a sentence like this and immediately begin to use it as one more desperate tool. They clutch it, they say it with tension, they drive it into the mind as though they were trying to force open a locked gate. But that only repeats the old state. The tone matters, the posture matters. The phrase must be spoken inwardly, not as a beggar pleading for change, but as one settling. A beggar says the words, hoping they will rescue him. One who is settling into truth says them, because they already feel like the shape of reality. A beggar repeats from panic. One settling into truth repeats from deepening quiet. A beggar uses the phrase to get. One settling into truth uses the phrase to enter being. That is why the phrase should feel almost like a lullaby, something soft enough to carry into sleep, something that can be breathed, something that wraps around the body rather than striking against it. So as you lie there and the body grows heavier, say inwardly, I am already provided, and let the breath widen just a little, if it wishes. I am safely supplied, and let the shoulders lower just a little more. It is natural for me, and let the whole being feel a little less surprised by support. You are not forcing sensation, you are inviting agreement. There are also companion phrases you may use if they help the state settle more deeply. It is done. I am at ease. I am cared for. Each of these carries a fragrance of completion. It is done. Ends the old argument of when. I am at ease replaces the old internal chase with quiet resting. I am cared for removes the old loneliness around money and support. But again, do not use them as a barrage. Perhaps you say, it is done, and your body answers with a long inward sigh. That is enough. Perhaps you say, I am at ease, and the jaw softens, the brow releases, the belly unclenches. That is enough. Perhaps you say, I am cared for, and suddenly the old feeling that you must carry everything alone loses some of its hold. That is enough. The phrase has done its work when it evokes state. Now, one is enough if it is loved deeply enough to become familiar. One is enough if it is repeated with gentleness, night after night, until the subconscious begins to accept it as atmosphere. A man who says one sentence with feeling has done more than another who recites a page in fear. The deeper mind does not count, it receives. This is why I give you something simple enough to remember even when drowsy. The moment before sleep is not the time for complexity. It is not the time for long arguments or mental displays. It is the time for softness and repetition of the simplest truth. I am already provided. I am safely supplied. It is natural for me. If you carry only that, and carry it well, and carry it with the body feeling of relief, then you are carrying enough. And there is another mercy in this. Because the phrase is simple, you can return to it in the day as well. When the old thought rises, when the old fear tightens, when a letter appears or a number troubles the mind, you need not build a whole imaginal act in that moment. You may simply return inwardly. I am already provided. One breath, I am safely supplied. One softening, it is natural for me. One return to state. That is how the phrase begins to retrain the subconscious not only at night, but as the hidden music beneath the day. But tonight especially, I want it to become the thing you carry into sleep, not like a task, not like homework, like a blanket, like a murmured truth, like a little inward song that belongs more to feeling than to thought. Say it as the body grows heavy. Say it as the senses soften. Say it when the day's old evidence fades a little. Say it as one no longer arguing, but settling. I am already provided. I feel how different that is from the old internal prayer. Feel how different it is from what if there is not enough, or how will I manage, or I hope something changes soon. The old prayer is full of reaching and fear. The new prayer is full of atmosphere. It does not chase, it settles, it does not beg, it receives, it does not postpone, it accepts. And if you wish, once the phrase has softened you sufficiently, you may let it go. Or I am at ease, or I am cared for. Sometimes when the mind is very drowsy, fewer words are better. They sink more easily. They pass the threshold with less effort. But whether you use the longer phrase or the shorter companion, keep the same spirit. No strain, no force, no begging, only settling. This is what I want you to feel before we go further. I have something simple I can carry into sleep. Yes, something strong, because it is simple, not in spite of it. A small decree, a quiet prayer, a new atmosphere. I have something simple I can carry into sleep. So let it begin to belong to you now. Not as another burden, as another form of rest. I am already provided. I am safely supplied. It is natural for me. Let those words become softer and softer, until they are hardly words at all. Only feel. Now I want to give you the deeper reason this works, because when the soul understands the principle, it stops struggling with the practice. It no longer feels that it is pretending. It no longer feels that it is trying to trick life. It begins to see that there is a law here, quiet and exact, and because the law is exact, you may trust it. This is what I call the law of reversibility. You already know it in other parts of life, though perhaps you have never named it. If a certain cause produces a certain effect, then under the right conditions the effect can be entered first, and by entering it, the cause is called forth. In the world of consciousness, this is not strange at all. Indeed, it is the very secret of creation. For consciousness does not wait upon outer sequence in the same way the senses do. It accepts what is felt as true, and then life rearranges itself to match the accepted feeling. Let us make it very simple. If money would make you feel relieved, then relief assumed now can call forth money or its equivalent. If supply would make you feel safe, then safety assumed now can call forth supply. If being free from pressure would soften the body, then that softness entered now becomes the beginning of freedom. This is the reversal. Instead of waiting for the event to grant the feeling, you enter the feeling and let the event arise as its shadow. Most of it says, when money comes, then I will relax. And because it says this, it places relaxation in the future. It makes the feeling dependent upon outer proof. It turns peace into a reward granted only after circumstances have changed. Then it spends the present in tension, and tension becomes the state impressed upon the subconscious. The result is that the very thing one seeks is delayed by the emotional posture from which one seeks. The law says, I relax now, and money follows as the shadow of that relaxed state. Not because relaxation itself is paper or coin, but because relaxation is the felt end of being supported. It is the body's language of handled. It is the nervous system's language of enough. It is the inner effect of supply. If you wait for money to permit that feeling, you remain in waiting. If you enter that feeling now, you change the cause. Let that sink slowly into you. Cause and effect are reversible in consciousness. The senses say the event must come first. Consciousness says the feeling may come first. The senses say relief must be earned by visible change. Consciousness says visible change follows accepted relief. The senses say safety belongs to tomorrow when the figures improve. Consciousness says safety may be assumed now, and tomorrow must begin to reflect it. It is the deepest use of feeling, for the subconscious mind does not sit with a calendar in its hand. It does not say, this feeling is allowed only after a bank balance changes. It does not reason that way. It accepts the state that feels real, and then it begins to organize perception, behavior, opportunity, timing, and external events in accordance with that accepted state. Think of it in the most human way. Suppose a burden that has pressed on you for weeks were suddenly lifted tonight. What would happen in the body? You would exhale differently. The shoulders would not carry the same hardness, the forehead would soften, the mind would stop circling the same problem. You might even feel a strange quiet, almost an emptiness, because the old tension would no longer have a task. Very well. That bodily ease is the effect you have been waiting for the world to give you. But you may enter, and if you enter it now, sincerely, gently, naturally, the world must begin to justify it. This is why waiting is so deceptive. Waiting keeps the feeling in the future. Waiting says, not yet, not mine now. I must remain emotionally faithful to absence until life grants me permission to move. And because waiting is itself a state, the subconscious receives waiting. It receives not yet. It receives almost. It receives. Then life faithfully keeps the thing ahead of you, because that is the atmosphere you have made normal. Waiting is not neutral. It is creative delay. Now see the contrast clearly. When money comes, then I will relax. In that sentence, the cause is placed outside you. The world is made sovereign. The feeling is postponed. The present is surrendered to tension. The self remains dependent upon appearance. Now hear the reversal. I relax now, and money follows as the shadow of that relaxed state. In this sentence, the cause is within. The state is assumed first. The body is no longer ordered to remain in fear. The future is no longer the keeper of your peace. You have reclaimed the cause. And do not imagine I mean some theatrical collapse into false calm. I do not mean you must force your way into a feeling the body cannot yet bear. No, I mean you begin, even softly, even in little degrees, to let yourself feel what you have been postponing. A little more relief, a little more safety, a little more enoughness, a little more this is handled. That is enough to begin. The subconscious responds to direction, to tendency, to accepted climate. It does not require dramatic emotional displays. It requires inward truth. If money would make you feel more supported, then so. If money would make life feel less threatening, then let life feel a little less threatening now. If supply would let you breathe more fully, then breathe more fully now. If being free from pressure would let the shoulders drop, then let the shoulders drop now. Do not wait for the event to give you permission to enter your own deeper state. Enter the state and the event will be summoned by the law that reflects what is felt as real. This is the mercy hidden in the doctrine. You do not need to wait for the result to feel differently. You do not need to wait for the letter, the sum, the approval, the opening, the correction, the opportunity. You may begin where the world told you to end. You may feel first. And because you may feel first, you are no longer trapped by sequence in the old way. You are no longer the servant of visible order. You are working from the invisible. Now let me go even more quietly. Why does this collapse? Because the moment you enter the effect inwardly, the old reason for waiting begins to dissolve. The one who is relieved is not waiting for relief. The one who feels supported is not standing outside support. The one who feels safe is not pleading for safety with the same old desperation. The state itself changes the question. It changes the tone of the inner life. It changes the way tomorrow is met. And therefore, it changes the world that tomorrow. Many have said to me, but Neville, how can I feel relieved when the problem still appears? My answer has always been the same in spirit. You are not asked to worship appearance. You are asked to change the cause. The problem appearing is the old shadow. Your task is not to bow before it and take your feeling from it once again. Your task is to feel from the end. If the problem were solved, what would your body feel like? If the money matter were settled, what tone would your breathing take? If supply were already present, how would the room feel around you? Enter that. Not violently, tenderly. The body often knows this better than the mind. The body can feel the difference between panic and handled, between fear and safety, between clutching and support. So let the body assist you. Let the breath tell the subconscious a new story. Let the shoulders tell it. Let the chest. You are not trying to fool yourself. You are teaching the deeper mind the emotional consequence you choose to make real. And once made real, it must be externalized in some fitting form. This is why I have said over and over that the world is a mirror. The mirror gives back the inner face. If the face is tense, the mirror reports tension. If the face is relieved, the mirror must in time show the outer shape of that relief. It may come as money. It may come as a correction, an opportunity, a release, an opening, a bridge of incidents more elegant than anything the surface mind could have designed. But it will come in obedience to the accepted state. The mirror cannot resist the face. So do not say anymore, when money comes, then I will feel free. That is the old prayer of dependence. Let a new inward sentence be born. I feel free now, and life begins to answer that free. Do not say, when this is settled, then I will rest. Say instead, I rest now in the feeling that it is settling. Do not say, when I am provided for, then my body may soften. Say instead, I soften now, and support begins to take form around me. This is the turning point. Feeling differently is what begins the result, not because feeling is a decoration, but because feeling is cause in the realm of consciousness. Feeling, it selects reality. It does not ignore the outer. It governs the outer from within. It does not postpone life. It generates the next expression of life by changing the accepted emotional route. And perhaps now something in you can become much quieter. I do not need to wait for the result to feel differently. Let that be a deep permission. Feeling differently is what begins the result. Let that be a new order in you, not a slogan, a release from the old tyranny of sequence. So tonight, when you approach sleep, you need not stand outside your desire, asking when relief will come. You may enter relief. You need not stand outside support, hoping it will choose you. You may enter support. You need not stand outside safety, begging for proof. You may enter safety, and by entering, you change the cause. And when the cause changes, the world must follow. Now let us turn with great tenderness to something that must be understood if the new state is to feel safe enough to accept. For many people do not only have a money problem in the present, they have a memory problem in the body. They have old impressions still alive within them, and these old impressions continue to color every new financial moment. They may hear a number and not know why the chest tightens so quickly. They may open a letter and not know why the breath shortens before the eyes have even read a word. They may think of paying for something simple and feel a little shame, a little shrinking, a little tightening, without knowing that they are not reacting only to the present. They are reacting to the living memory of old fear. Past money pain survives as present feeling. That is one of the great truths most never see clearly. They imagine the past is gone because the calendar, but the body does not live by calendars. The body lives by emotional impression. If a scene from long ago still carries fear, shame, humiliation, helplessness, or rejection when remembered, then in the deeper sense it is not gone. It is active. It is still speaking. It is still giving instruction. And what it instructs the nervous system to expect, the subconscious tends to recreate. Old memories of bills, shame, rejection, we can't, humiliation, and fear continue to shape the current response. Think of how many lives have been quietly organized around a few repeated impressions. A child hears, we can't afford it enough times, and begins to join money with denial, tightness, impossibility. Someone stands at a counter, unable to pay, and feels exposed, small, ashamed. A letter arrives once with harsh consequences, and from then on, letters carry dread. A person asks for help and is met with dismissal or coldness, and now money conversations carry the flavor of rejection. Another sees worry in the faces of adults and learns, without anyone formally teaching it, that money means danger. These scenes settle deep. They become emotional teachers. Then later, when the grown man or woman tries to imagine abundance, the body hesitates. Not always because it rejects abundance consciously, but because supply does not yet feel safe. The nervous system has been trained into another conclusion. It has learned to brace. It has learned to expect threat. It has learned to shrink. And so the state of being supplied can feel strange, almost unbelievable, not because it is false, but because old emotional residue is still occupying the inner room. That is why revision is so merciful. Revision changes the emotional meaning of memory. It does not require you to go back and fight the past. It does not require you to punish yourself further with old scenes. It does not require you to deny that something happened. It asks something much gentler and far more powerful. It asks that you stop feeding the old interpretation and begin to plant another. Revision says, I will not continue letting that moment instruct my future. I will change the feeling tone of the scene, and by changing the feeling tone, I will change the seed. Now understand this clearly. You are not imprisoned by history. You are imprisoned only by continued identification with it. The event itself does not stand over you with power forever. It is your continued emotional loyalty to the old version of the event that keeps it alive. Every time the scene is remembered with the same fear, the same shame, the same humiliation, the same not enough, you breathe life back into it. You keep it present. You keep it instructive. But the moment you change the imaginal meaning of the memory, you begin to free the body from its old command. Revising money scenes retrains the body away from threat. This is where revision becomes practical and deeply healing. If a certain type of letter has long meant fear, revision can begin to teach the nervous system another response. If a money conversation has long meant shame, revision can bathe that conversation in dignity and support. If we can't has been carved deeply into the heart, revision can replace it with it is handled. If a painful bill has felt like judgment, revision can change it to paid in full. If an embarrassing moment has lived in the body as exposure, revision can remake it as calm dignity. If rejection has been woven into money memories, revision can replace it with support. If money shame has become identity, revision can introduce reassurance and worthiness. Let me show you how gentle this can be. Suppose there is a memory of hearing, we can't. Perhaps it was spoken often. Perhaps it carried more than information. Perhaps it carried tension in the room, disappointment in the air, a feeling that life was narrow and support uncertain. Now, if you keep that memory unchanged, each time something is desired or required in the present, the old feeling rises again. We can't. The body obeys it before the conscious mind even notices. But in revision, you return to the scene softly, not to suffer in it again, but to alter its emotional truth. You hear instead, it is handled, or we have enough, or do not worry, it is all right. And then you allow the body to feel the difference. That felt difference is the new seed. Or take the memory of a painful bill. Many have felt a bill not merely as a paper, but as accusation, dread, a tightening of the whole being. In revision, you do not leave the nervous system under the same old command. You imagine that paper differently. You see the words paid in. You see the mark of settlement. You see the burden completed. And as you do, you let the shoulders drop, the breath widen, the chest soften. The subconscious does not ask whether this came from imagination or from outer sight. It responds to the felt reality. And that new felt reality begins to overwrite the old emotional instruction. Or perhaps there is an embarrassing moment, a humiliation around money. Perhaps you could not pay, or had to ask, or felt exposed, and that moment may still live in the body as I am small, I am ashamed, money makes me vulnerable. But revision steps in as mercy. You return to the scene and alter it. The moment becomes calm dignity. The face remains composed. The other person is kind. The exchange is easy. You stand in self-respect. Nothing in you collapses. That is not fantasy for its own sake. It is the retraining of identity. It is the planting of dignity, where shame once lived. Perhaps support was once asked for and denied. Perhaps a request was met with coldness. Perhaps the old money story includes being left alone with burdens too heavy to carry. Revision allows you to hear a different answer. Support appears where rejection once stood. Kindness appears where indifference once ruled. The words become, of course I will help, or you are not alone in this, or it is all right, we will manage it. The emotional meaning of the scene changes. And when its emotional meaning changes, your present relationship to money begins to change with it. This is why I say money shame can be met with reassurance and worthiness. Some carry not only fear of shortage, but shame around receiving, shame around needing, shame around not knowing, shame around past mistakes. They speak of money as though it were a test of personal worth. Revision loosens this cruel knot. You may go back inwardly to the scene where shame took root and flood it with a new atmosphere. The face of another becomes gentle. The words become reassuring. The body is no longer condemned. Worthiness enters the room. And the nervous system over time begins to stop bracing against the possibility of support. Do you see how tender and powerful this is? You do not have to keep living from old financial fear. That fear may have been taught, repeated, reinforced, inherited, modeled, spoken, suffered. But it need not remain king. It need not continue to issue commands to the body. You may begin tonight to loosen its hold, not by fighting memory, by revising it. And please notice, this is not about falsifying your history in some shallow sense. It is about reclaiming your creative right over the meaning you continue to give it. The past as outer event may have occurred, but the inner meaning of the past is still being recreated every time you remember it. That meaning is not fixed unless you keep fixing it. Revision simply says, I will not continue to use yesterday's fear as the father of tomorrow. The body is often far more faithful to old impressions than the conscious mind realizes. The mind says, that was years ago. The body says, I know this danger. So when the body tightens around money matters, do not hate it. It is only obeying what it was taught. Speak to it differently now. Show it differently now. Give it another memory to live by. Give it scenes of handled, of settled, of kindness, of enough, of worthiness, of safety. Little by little, the body begins to learn that money need not mean threat, life need not mean bracing, support need not mean risk, receiving need not mean shame. So perhaps tonight, before sleep deepens, you might gently allow one old, not the largest perhaps, unless it comes softly, just one scene that still carries a sting, and then, without force, revise it. Let we can't become it is handled. Let the painful bill become paid in full. Let the embarrassing moment become calm dignity. Let rejection become support. Let money shame become reassurance and worthiness. Let the body feel the new emotional truth, even if only for a few quiet moments. That is enough to begin. The past can loosen its hold on you tonight. Not all at once, perhaps, but truly, it can loosen. The old scene need not keep dictating your current state. You are not its prisoner, unless you continue to identify with it. And because you are the operant power in imagination, you may choose differently now. Let this settle deeply. I do not have to keep living from old financial fear. The past can loosen its hold on me tonight. Those are not mere comforts. They are permissions. Permissions to stop carrying yesterday's wound as tomorrow's atmosphere. Permissions to let the nervous system soften around money. Permissions to become safe enough inside that the new state of supply can finally feel believable. Not because the old fear never existed, but because you are no longer bowing to it as final truth. Stay there now, very gently. Let the idea of revision become less like effort and more like mercy, less like work and more like release. The past can loosen. The body can learn again. The old story is not the only story. And tonight, in this soft borderland before sleep, you may begin to tell another. Now let me ease one of the great anxieties of the human heart, for many can enter the state for a little while and then lose peace because they begin at once to ask, how will it come, through whom, by what path, how soon, what sign will prove that it has begun? And the old strain returns, because the mind wishes to supervise what belongs to a wisdom deeper than itself. So I must speak to you now of the bridge of incidents, and I must speak of it in a way that quiets the need to control. The bridge begins the moment the state is accepted, not when the world first shows evidence, not when the letter arrives, not when the money appears, not when someone telephones, not when a circumstance visibly changes. The bridge begins inwardly, at once in the unseen. The instant the subconscious accepts the new condition as true, the moment you accept yourself as provided for, the bridge begins. The moment you fall asleep in relief rather than fear, the bridge begins. The moment you revise the old money wound into safety and dignity, the bridge begins. The world may still look the same for a little while, but beneath appearances the movement has already started. This is where many become impatient because they think only the visible counts. They do not yet trust the unseen beginning. They look out the next morning and say, nothing has changed. But that is because they expect the bridge to appear all at once, like a great road laid down before them. Life is subtler than that. The bridge is often built underfoot. One plank appears, then another. A small event, a quiet turn, a delayed meeting, an unexpected thought, a letter you almost ignored, a conversation that seemed ordinary at the time. These things may look insignificant when they first occur, and yet later you will see that they were all part of the way being made. The bridge may look ordinary. This is one of the most important things to understand. Fulfillment often does not arrive wearing a dramatic costume. It arrives clothed in common days and simple events. You may call it coincidence. You may think, well, that just happened. Yet often what appears ordinary is the law in motion. One is tempted to overlook it because it does not match the mind's theatrical expectations. But the law is not interested in spectacle, it is interested in fulfillment. And fulfillment often unfolds in the same quiet language with which a tree grows or dawn arrives. The bridge may include delays, detours, or seemingly unrelated events. This too must be understood, or the old habit of fear will try to reclaim you. Sometimes the very first movement of the bridge does not look like progress. A plan may dissolve, a certain door may close, something may be postponed, an expected route may fail to appear. And because the mind is still secretly attached to one narrow channel, it panics and says, it is not working. But you do not yet know what the bridge requires. The subconscious, being wiser than the conscious planning mind, may move you through a route you would never have chosen because it sees farther than you see. A delay is not always denial. A detour is not always loss. An unrelated event is not always unrelated. Life may be moving furniture in the unseen room while the outer eye thinks nothing is happening. The bridge is not obligated to look sensible to the surface mind. It is obligated only to lead from the accepted state to its visible expression. If you try to judge every incident too early, you will often misread the movement and frighten yourself with the very means by which fulfillment is approaching. One must not dictate the channel. This is where trust becomes so necessary. People often say, it must come through this person, it must come through this job, it must come in this exact sum, by this exact road, through this exact event. And by narrowing the channel in that way, they tighten the whole process. They make themselves servants of one possible route and then miss the subtler openings. But the law does not ask you to design the channel. It asks you to accept the end. The end selects its own means. The state carries within itself the road to its own fulfillment. If you have accepted the state of being supplied, then supply may come as money, or opportunity, or reduction of burden, or correction, or help, or some arrangement more elegant than anything you would have planned. The visible form may vary, but the inner end remains the same. That is why I have said again and again, your work is loyalty to the end, not control of the means. Remain loyal to being supported. Remain loyal to relief. Remain loyal to the feeling of handled. Remain loyal to the quiet certainty that this is natural for you. Leave the channel to life. This is not passivity in the weak sense, it is confidence in law. It is the refusal to keep uprooting the seed in order to inspect it. It is the refusal to stand over the soil shouting instructions at the hidden process. The listener's work is loyalty to the end, not control of the means. Let that become a kind of inward rest. Loyalty to the end means that when old appearances try to alarm you, you return to the state. When a detour appears, you do not instantly call it failure. When a door closes, you do not instantly conclude that the law has abandoned you. You remain with the accepted end and allow life to build the route. What looks like coincidence is often obedience to the state. How often have I seen this and watched people almost dismiss their own bridge because it looked too natural? A casual remark from a friend leads to a needed introduction. A forgotten matter is suddenly corrected. A delay prevents a greater burden. A routine errand produces an unforeseen answer. A person one had not thought of in months becomes the means of relief. A problem shifts not by drama, but by sequence. The outer mind calls this luck or coincidence because it does not see the invisible ordering. But you, having understood something deeper, may begin to see these events. They are not random sparks in a dead universe. They are often obedience to the state accepted within. Now let me soothe the anxious question once more. But how will I know? My dear friend, you do not need to know the bridge in advance. If you knew it all in advance, you would try to manage it, and management born of fear would only return you to the old state. You are not asked to know every step. You are asked to trust the accepted condition more than the visible gap between here and there. That is all. You need not figure out how. Life can build the bridge without your strain. You have likely spent many years thinking that if you could only think hard enough, plan hard enough, worry long enough, then you might somehow control the path. But worry has never built a bridge. It has only made the river look wider. Fear has never created a path. It has only made the feet doubt the ground. Control is often only another form of mistrust, and mistrust returns you to the old state of not having. But the bridge does not require your panic. It requires your inward consent to the end, and your willingness to let the unseen do its proper work. There is a great gentleness in this if you allow yourself to feel it. You do not need to sit awake inventing the means. You do not need to torture the mind with endless possibilities. You do not need to keep asking which door, which person, which amount, which date. Those questions belong to the surface and often arise from the old fear. The deeper answer is simpler. Remain in the state. Remain in the relief. Remain in the support. Remain in the quiet normality of being provided for. And let life attend to the route. Even when the bridge looks strange, remain gentle. Even when a delay appears, remain gentle. Even when something shifts and you do not yet understand the meaning, remain gentle. The river reaches the sea without asking your permission at every bend. The seed does not consult you before sending the root downward and the sprout upward. The dawn does not announce every change in the sky before it becomes morning. So too life may be building the way in silence. And perhaps this is one of the deepest forms of rest available to the human heart. To know that one need not always be architect, laborer, and watchman all at once. To know that once the end is accepted, something wiser begins to move. To know that life can build the bridge without your strain. To know that not every delay is against you, not every detour is loss, not every ordinary event is empty of meaning. To know that the unseen has already begun. So let these words settle now, where impatience used to sit. I do not need to figure out how. Life can build the bridge without my strain. Again, softly, I do not need to figure out how. Life can build the bridge without my strain. Let the body hear that. Let the shoulders hear that. Let the breathing hear that. Let the old watchman in the mind grow a little less tense, for the bridge has already begun wherever the state has truly been accepted. And the one who trusts the end may walk with greater peace, even before the road is fully seen. Now let me show you how to move through the day without undoing in sunlight what you planted in the dark. For many can enter a beautiful state before sleep and even feel its truth for a time, yet by morning the old habit returns and begins at once to speak with its familiar voice. It comments on the day, it comments on the numbers, it comments on the letters, the tasks, the delays, the faces, the little inconveniences, the visible facts. And because this commentary feels ordinary, many do not realize that it too is prayer. It too is planting. It too is creative. Daytime inner commentary is also prayer. What you say to yourself in the secret of your own being as you move through the day is not harmless background noise. It is the atmosphere in which your life continues to unfold. If you look at a bill and whisper inwardly, "Of course, here we go again," that is prayer. If you hear of an expense and say inside, "I can never get ahead," that is prayer. If you open a letter and the first inward movement is dread, then dread has begun praying before the mind has even finished reading. All these little comments seem small, but they are the very food of the subconscious. So the listener must stop feeding lack through automatic inner speech, not with violence, not with fear, not by becoming rigid and frightened of every thought. That would only create a new bondage. But one must become aware enough to notice when the old state begins to feed itself. You are not asked to become a perfect guardian who never lets an old thought appear. You are asked to stop serving it meals all day long. You are asked to stop offering it your agreement. Reaction is the old state trying to re-enter. This must be understood with tenderness. When something happens in the day and you feel the old tightening, the old hurry, the old inner shrinking, that does not mean you have failed. It means the old state is knocking. It means an old habit of identification is trying to re-establish itself. It wants to say, "Come back here. This is who you are. This is how money feels. This is how life works for you." But a knock is not an order. A knock is only an invitation. You do not have to open the door. The key is gentle return, not mental warfare. I say this because the mind loves to turn even spiritual truth into conflict. It hears that inner speech matters and immediately wants to fight every thought, police every feeling, and create a new strain around getting the mind right. But strain is still the old atmosphere. Strain is still a confession that peace has not yet been accepted. So do not make war on the mind. You do not need to wrestle every shadow. You do not need to become inwardly harsh. You need only return. Return softly, calmly, faithfully, as one returns home after stepping out into the cold. No drama, no punishment, only return. The listener is not asked for perfection, only faithful returning. Let that be a comfort. You are not asked to move through the day in some impossible state of flawless inner speech. You are not asked never to feel fear again, never to think an old thought again. You are asked for something much more human and much more effective. You are asked to notice when you drift and then come back. That is all. To drift is not failure. To remain drifted without returning is the only real loss. And because you can always return, you are never far from the state. One breath, one inner sigh, one returning phrase is enough. This is how gentle the law can be when rightly understood. You do not need a full ceremony in the middle of the day. You do not need to stop everything and enter some long process. Very often, one breath is enough. One softening of the shoulders, one release of the jaw, one quiet exhale, one inward whisper, "I am already provided," or "It is done," or "I am safely supplied." If those words are taken not as a weapon but as a return, they are enough to shift the state again. Let me show you how simple this can be in the middle of an ordinary day. Something happens, A number appears, a letter arrives, a thought of lack rises, you feel the old tightening, or the jaw, or the chest. Exhale. Let the breath go out a little longer than it was. Then whisper inwardly, I am already provided, or perhaps it is done. Then feel relief, even for a moment, only a moment, just enough that the body remembers, and continue the day. That is all. That is enough. You have interrupted the old prayer and returned to the new one. This small act, repeated whenever it keeps you from digging it up with old inner speech, for that is what many do. They plant beautifully at night, and then by morning they begin again with, what if this doesn't work? How will I manage? Nothing has changed. I knew it. These comments are like hands reaching into the soil to inspect the seed every hour. They do not help growth, they disturb it, but a gentle return protects it. A faithful return protects it. A calm return protects it. I want to make this very practical for you. Imagine you wake and the first old thought tries to speak. Before you follow it, pause. Let the body remain still for a breath. Whisper inwardly, I am already provided. Feel the bed still holding you. Feel the body still supported. Begin there. Then perhaps later you encounter some financial matter. Do not panic because the old feeling rose. The old feeling, let relief touch you for a moment. Move on. Later someone speaks fear around you. Again, no need to fight them or defend yourself. You simply do not enter their state. Pause inwardly. Return. I am safely supplied. And continue. This is how the day becomes your ally instead of your enemy. Not because the day stops presenting appearances, but because appearances no longer decide your prayer. That loyalty is enough. The subconscious learns by atmosphere, by repetition, by the states you keep returning to. Every gentle return says, this is the home I choose now. This is the climate I choose now. This is what I am making natural. There is another freedom here as well. When you stop fighting thoughts and simply return, you remove guilt from the process. Many people lose more peace through guilt than through the original. They react to something, then condemn themselves for reacting. And now they have created two layers of disturbance where there was only one. No, better to be simple. You noticed, good, now return. You drifted, good, now return. There is no need to make a tragedy out of a passing reaction. The old state may knock often at first. Let it knock. You no longer live there. Just return. This is why I tell you, it is the gentle refusal to keep eating lack. It is the quiet decision not to swallow every old conclusion whole. It is the willingness to say, no, I will not continue feeding that atmosphere. I will return to provision. I will return to relief. I will return to being handled. The body will learn this. The nervous system will learn this. The subconscious will be impressed not only by what you do before sleep, but by the climate you keep If you wish, you may keep the return method in its simplest form. Pause, soften, exhale, whisper inwardly. Feel relief. Continue. That is enough. Pause, soften, exhale. I am already provided. Feel relief. Continue. Or if another phrase suits the moment better, use it. It is done. I am at ease. I am cared for. Always the same spirit. Not, and because I know how human beings live, let me say it once more with all kindness. You will drift. Of course you will drift. Old habits do not vanish because you heard one truth in the night. But now you know something you did not know before. If I drift, I can always return. That is a tremendous freedom. If I drift, I can always return. I do not need to scold myself. I do not need to start over from the beginning. Let that become part of your daytime atmosphere too. Not only the phrase of provision, but the permission of return. For once a person knows they can always return, fear begins to lose one of its favorite tools, which is the suggestion of irreparable failure. There is no irreparable failure in a moment of drift. There is only the invitation to come home again, and every return strengthens the new state a little more. So move through the I can protect the state during the day without struggle. Yes, without struggle. I can protect it by returning, not by fighting. I can protect it by softening, not by clenching. I can protect it by a breath, a sigh, a phrase, a moment of relief. That is enough. More than enough. And if at some moment the day grows heavy, remember this. You are not being asked to carry the whole. One phrase, one feeling of relief. Continue. The seed is protected not by force, but by faithful atmosphere. The state is preserved not by obsession, but by loyalty. So let this be very simple now, as it settles into you. Daytime inner commentary is prayer. Reaction is only the old state trying to re-enter. The answer is gentle return. You are not asked for perfection, only. Let me give you now a few quiet proofs, not proofs in the sense of argument, for argument seldom reaches the deeper man, but proofs in the way a lamp proves light simply by shining. I have always found that when truth is heard through lived experience, the heart receives it more easily. A principle may seem distant when stated plainly, but when it is seen moving through an ordinary human life, it becomes intimate, it becomes believable. It begins to feel as though it too might move through one's own life in the same silent manner. I remember a woman who came to me with the kind of weariness that does not always show in the face, but can be heard in the voice. She was not dramatic. She was not one to speak extravagantly. She had simply carried pressure too long. There was a debt upon her, and more than the amount itself, it was the feeling of the debt that had exhausted her. She had lived for some time in the inner posture of not yet relieved. She would wake thinking of it and go to sleep thinking of it. The debt had become more than a financial matter. It had become an atmosphere. When she first spoke to me, she spoke as so many do. She spoke of the amount. She spoke of the circumstances. She spoke of what must happen before she could rest. But after listening for a little while, I said to her, "You have made, let us reverse it. Tell me how you would feel if it were already settled." At first, she could not answer easily. That is often the case. People have so trained themselves to wait for the outer condition that they no longer know how relief feels apart from the event. So I asked her not for a grand vision, but for one small imaginal act. I suggested she see a paper in her own hands with a stamp across it, paid in full, nothing more. Not all the means by which the thing would come about, only the end. I asked her to take that into the borderland before sleep and let the body respond to it as though it were already true, not with excitement, but with relief, not with strain, but with a long inward softening. She did this, quietly, faithfully, night after night. Now, what is beautiful in such cases is that the outer world often begins to. After some days, she noticed first, not outer evidence, but inward quiet. The debt was not yet visibly gone, and yet she was no longer carrying it in the same way. She no longer spoke of it with the same tone. The body no longer tightened at every mention of money. Something had loosened. That itself was a sign that the cause had shifted. Then, quite naturally, through a matter she had not expected, a correction appeared. There had been a mistake in an old account, a matter overlooked, something that had been standing unresolved but unnoticed in her favor. It was not dramatic. No one would have written it down as a miracle in the newspapers. Yet it brought her precisely the relief required to ease the debt and set things right. And when she later spoke to me, she did not speak as one astonished by magic. She spoke as one who had begun to understand law. She said, "It came quietly, almost as though it had been waiting for me to stop gripping the burden." That is often how it comes, quietly, naturally, as obedience, not as spectacle. I think also of a man who had for years thought of himself as unnoticed. This was not only about money on the surface, though money was involved. It was about his place in life. He felt himself to be one of those men who work and are not seen, who try and are not rewarded, who remain on the edge of opportunity, while others seem to be invited inward. He had made an identity of being overlooked, and because he had made an identity of it, the world had reflected it. Doors did not seem to open for him, not because he lacked skill, but because his inward attitude was always that of one awaiting. I did not tell him to push himself forward or demand recognition. I told him instead to change the state. I asked him to imagine not the whole advancement of his life, but one short scene that would imply he was already valued. He chose a simple one. He imagined a friend congratulating him, saying in a warm and natural tone, "I'm so pleased to see how things have opened for you." I asked him to hear it, not as a wish, but as remembrance, to let the words fall upon him as though they were already part of his life. He took this into sleep, and more importantly, he began to move through the day as one no longer inwardly begging to be seen. The outer bridge came not through the channel he expected. The very place in which he had long tried to force advancement yielded nothing. Instead, through an introduction that seemed all, work appeared where he had not looked. Recognition came from another quarter. And because he was already inwardly inhabiting the state of being valued, He could step into it without shrinking. Had the same opportunity come earlier, he might have approached it with the old identity and lost it. But now the state was different, so the bridge met him naturally. Later he told me it did not feel like luck. It felt as though something had simply turned in my favor. That is how the mirror behaves when the face changes. It seems outwardly as though life has become kinder, but the real kindness began within. In the moment he stopped naming himself as overlooked and allowed himself to feel the atmosphere of being received. There was also a woman whose money fear had roots much farther back than the present moment. It was not merely a matter of bills, it was memory. She had once endured a humiliating financial moment, something small perhaps to another eye, but deep enough in feeling that her whole nervous system carried it forward. She had stood in public, unable to complete a purchase, and the embarrassment of that moment lived on in her. From that time onward, even simple financial acts carried a charge of shame. She did not think of it each day consciously, yet her body remembered. It shrank. It meant exposure. When I spoke with her, it was clear that the problem was no longer in the outer event itself, but in the state that had been formed around it. So I gave her revision. I asked her not to deny the past, but to change the emotional meaning of it. I told her to return to that scene at night, not to relive its pain, but to alter it. To see herself calm, dignified, composed. To see the exchange complete. To feel that nothing in her had been reduced by the moment. She did this gently, without violence, night after night. And something very interesting happened. Before any outer financial change became visible, the body changed. She could enter a shop without the old shrinking. She could handle money without feeling inwardly judged. She could look at numbers without the old hot wave of shame. That alone was a liberation. But the story did not end. For when the fear left money, her whole relationship to provision changed. She no longer avoided opportunities. She no longer made decisions from hidden embarrassment. And shortly thereafter, she found, by what seemed a very natural unfolding, that money began to move more easily in her life. Not because she worshipped it more, but because she no longer feared it. The old humiliation had lost its authority. And I recall a listener who had done something very simple. And because it was so simple, it would be easy to underestimate it. This person had spent years asking from lack. Every prayer was a cry from not having. Every thought of money came clothed in waiting. The whole inner speech was, when will it happen? How will I manage? Why is it always like this? After hearing me speak, this person did not undertake any grand. They only stopped asking from lack. That was the change. They began before sleep to feel supplied, not rich in a theatrical sense, but supported, not excited, but relieved. They used one small phrase inwardly, I am already provided. And they repeated it not like a beggar, but like one laying down in a truth too simple to be dramatic. In the day when the old panic rose, they did not fight it, savage. One inward, it is done. That was enough. Now, after some time, this person wrote to tell me that nothing in the outer world had changed overnight, and yet life had begun to reorganize in ways that were impossible to miss once seen. Certain old burdens lessened. A path of income that had seemed blocked quietly reopened. A conversation led to one thing, and that led to another. A matter that had long felt fixed began to. Most striking of all, they said, the whole thing came with less noise than I would have expected. I kept waiting for something dramatic, but instead life just started behaving differently. Yes, quiet inner changes really do produce outer changes. They often do so without fanfare. The world simply begins to correspond to the new state. This is why I tell these stories not to entertain you, but to steady you. There is nothing peculiar here. The forms differ, the personalities differ, the bridges differ, the channels differ, but the underlying movement is constant. The state changes first. The body begins to reflect it. The inner speech softens. The old identity loosens. Then life, which had seemed so hard and external, begins to shift. A correction here, an opening there, a conversation, a delay that turns out to be protection, a door that closes. If you listen closely, you will hear the same note through all these lives. None were changed by mere wishing. None were changed by frantic repetition. None were changed by trying to overpower the world. They were changed by quiet inner acceptance, by relief before evidence, by dignity before outer respect, by support before visible supply, by revision of the old fear, by the simple, faithful inhabiting of a new state. It should whisper to you that the law has worked for others. It should show you that quiet inner changes really do produce outer changes. Not always with thunder, often with the gentleness of a river changing course, often with the ordinary appearance of natural life. Yet under that naturalness is obedience. So let these remembered lives settle around you now like lamps in the evening. A woman imagines a debt settled and relief comes through an unexpected. A man assumes himself valued and work opens through a channel he did not foresee. A person revises an old humiliation and money loses its old sting. Another stops asking from lack and begins to feel supplied, and the whole arrangement of life begins to alter. These things are not distant from you. They belong to the same law that is available in you now. Perhaps that is enough for this moment. Not to prove anything to the sharp mind. It has worked before. It can work here too. And in that softened recognition, faith becomes less like effort and more like natural remembrance. Now let yourself go a little deeper with me. There is nothing to analyze here, nothing to master with the sharp mind. You have heard enough for the moment. Now let the words become slower and softer, so that you no longer stand outside them trying to understand, but begin to feel them from within. Let it become quieter still. Let the room recede a little more. Let the breath continue in its own gentle rhythm. And now, rather than think about supply, begin to feel the body of one for whom supply is becoming ordinary. Imagine now, very softly, that there is a letter before you, not a threatening letter, not a heavy one, only a simple envelope resting in your hand. Perhaps in another season your chest would have tightened. Perhaps the old habit would have rushed ahead of you and filled the body with silent dread before the eyes had read a single word. But not now, not in this state. Now the hand remains easy. The shoulders do not rise. The breath does not shorten. You hold the letter, and there is nothing sharp in you. It is only paper. Only paper. And you open it calmly. Feel what that means in the body. No inward drive. A feeling that whatever is before you is already held within a larger order. You do not need to force courage. You simply do not enter the old fear. You open the letter with the calm of one who is supported. You look with untroubled eyes. The body remains open. The jaw remains soft. The hands remain still. And there is a deep, simple feeling beneath it all. This is handled. Now let that scene soften and become another. Imagine that you are looking at money matters. Perhaps figures on a page, perhaps an account, perhaps an ordinary household calculation. In the old state, there may have been an immediate contraction, a tightening in the belly, a pressure in the chest, as though the numbers themselves had power over your being. But now the figures are only figures. They do not own your nervous system. They do not define your identity. They do not command the breath. You remain supported. You remain inwardly safe. Feel how different that is. The eyes move over the page without alarm. The mind does not rush into old prophecy. The body does not prepare for conflict. The shoulders are lower. The breathing is softer. You are not fighting the numbers, and you are not bowing to them. You are simply present, and beneath your presence there is a steadiness that says, without words, very gently, very naturally. Imagine paying for something calmly, something ordinary, perhaps a bill, perhaps a simple need, but there is no old tightening now, no old inner shrinking, no secret shame, no sense that the act of paying means loss or threat. You move through the act quietly, almost casually, as one who is not being drained by life, but carried through it. You pay calm. There is no argument in you, only the quiet atmosphere of enough. Stay there a moment. Feel how money moves differently when fear is not wrapped around it. Feel how the body becomes more spacious when every exchange is no longer treated as danger. Paying calmly, not performing calm, but feeling it. The old contraction is absent. The old inward chase is absent. There is only the simple movement of life through one who is. Imagine yourself sitting quietly at home, no one asking anything of you, no urgency in the room, perhaps a chair, perhaps a lamp, perhaps the soft nearness of evening. And the feeling in the room and in the body is that everything is in order, not because every visible detail has been checked and conquered, but because the deeper state is order. The deeper state is support. The deeper state is, this is handled. You are resting as one already helped.